Hey guys, welcome back to channel. So today we going to see Naruto x Rwby. What if Naruto x Blake x Rwby x Yank x Weiss? Let's start. Chapter 1. The Legacy of a Devil. For many years, Naruto could only remember pain. All his body could ever think about was pain. The pain of having everything stripped from him. The pain of not being able to do anything. The pain of not being strong enough. Ever since he could remember, which was right from the beginning when it happened, he was considered weak. His family was one of the most prestigious houses in the Vale. They were warriors, hunters and huntresses that sought to make their mark everywhere and anywhere in the world. They were revered as a family of mercenaries if you're looking for a dramatic approach. They went wherever the money was good. People paid top bucks to hire them just to rid demons and creatures of Grimm from the world. But when the time came to produce a new heir to the noble family, Naruto was conceived. He was born on the 10th of October. He would have been born sooner if his mother hadn't gone into a fight with a Grimm and ingested a slight bit of the blood spatter that sprayed her face from said Grimm. The blood never harmed her biology in any way. But it did affect the unborn child drastically. So much in fact that when the child was born, his hair turned a pure snow white and his eyes were an ice-cold blue. His parents did everything to distill the fundamentals of what it means to make your mark in the world. But they failed. They failed when he couldn't even do the most basic thing. Call on your power. It wasn't his fault. He found out quite recently that he had Grimm blood flowing through his veins. How he found out was that when he cut himself, by accident mind you, when he was climbing a tree. What he found was that his blood was a more darker shade of red than regular blood, with Grimm being an extremely dark red when he read up on then. Then the worst came around. His parents gave up on him 4 years after his little sister was born. Naruto was only 8 at the time when she was born. Now she didn't have the Grimm blood in her veins like he did, and she showed even more promise than him. She excelled in everything and even scored a perfect score on everything. Naruto struggled so much due to the constant shunning and scorning that had reared its ugly head for him to see. Even the comparing of him to her. How she was such a genius and a prodigy while he was a waste of oxygen. But even through all this darkness, there was one candle that Naruto clung to. This candle went by the name of Mito, his grandmother. She never scorned him, never hated him, and never belittled him. She did everything she could to teach him everything she knew while trying to help him in his growing insanity. His little sister had even caught on what was going on between Naruto and Mito and snitched on them. Mito was yelled at and belittled for not training the rightful heir. But Mito didn't care. She continued to train Naruto and constantly tried her best to not show the cracks of hardship from the words of hate directed at her. But that was when that candle was snuffed out of existence. Mito passed away in her sleep and Naruto was now fully in the darkness. The abuse and neglect worsened ever since, and so did his growing insanity. He was nicknamed the Failure. One day, Naruto found a will Mito wrote down, and in the will was the handing of possession of her weapon, Osiris. A legendary scythe that had high attack powers and was used also to destroy a powerful Grimm. She was handing it over to Naruto. Naruto accepted the weapon, but when the family found out, they scorned him and beat him, followed by them telling him he's a thief and that he should never take anything that wasn't his. He showed them the will, but they brushed it off by stating that he just forged it as well as Mito's signature. Naruto was seriously isolated beyond anything in the world. His very being and even his own thoughts were ravaged by the constant voices in his head, screaming and laughing at him. His insanity was so worse that he would have ice-cold showers, so cold that it was like standing naked in the Arctic regions, just to have some calmness in his mind. But it never worked, as the screams would only come back as soon as the water stopped. To ensure he would never get in the way of his little sister, Naruto's parents locked him away in a cell in the basement that was cold and damp. Not even a shred of light was seen. At least he'd be fed. Yeah, right. As soon as that door closed, not even a scrap of food came down for him. He was forgotten, he was neglected, he should have known. He should expected this from the start. He was always the outcast, the downtrodden, the unspoken of. But as he was thinking on what he was going to do with this feeling of loneliness, something inside him snapped, and it was this snap that caused the Grimm blood flowing in his veins to awaken. Naruto's body took a massive transformation. His hair grew longer and more tamed to be shaggy and shoulder length. but still retained a few spikes here and there. His body grew with bones breaking and mending to form a body of 14 years old. But the most noticeable change was when his right arm, from the elbow down to the fingertips, turned to something demonic. From the elbow straight down to the palm on the top of his hand, a blue stream burst forth with the fingers glowing a blue color with the stream. Red scales shot out and covered the rest of the arm and gave off a malicious vibe to it when its birth was completed. Above the basement of the house, a party was going on. Now Naruto's parents were the strongest of the main house and were named Kushina and Minato respectively. They were enjoying a nice time outside, a small gathering of all the members of their house to celebrate their proud daughter. But their little happy time was interrupted when half the house exploded with black flames going everywhere. What stepped out didn't even look human. Naruto was seen, walking out the house with his aura flowing off his body. His aura was a black color and screamed insanity and hatred. Minato was the first to charge at him. All he saw was a monster that had destroyed his house. Not the son that was neglected because of past sins. Naruto saw this from a mile away and struck Minato in the ribcage. He handled his speed, which was considered unparalleled to anything, with such grace and cunning. He was nicknamed the Yellow Flash for a reason. And here he was shown true strength. Minato was sent rocketing back into his wife, and she found him passed out with 7 of his ribs broken, and funny enough, parts of his back. He'd never be able to go on any missions anymore. His back would not be able to take the stress. Looking in horror at the monster before her, she too charged at him, her chains swirling around her as she tried a more distant attack. But Naruto sent off a wave of aura at her which caused her to be paralyzed in fear. Her body shook as she stood frozen where she stood. Slowly, Naruto approached her and proceeded to break her bones slowly, starting with her fingers. Screams of sheer agony rung in the air as the people stood there shocked at what was before them. While the sound was haunting to them, it was soothing to Naruto. His insanity was because of them. His hatred was because of them. And this power was because of them. Thinking he was now bored with torturing her. He had broken her 2 arms in several places and her leg was completely broken. Only fractured bones that would probably never heal resided in her leg. He walked away and took Osiris with him. The scythe just rested in a picture frame. It was considered useless to them as the weapon was just too heavy to pick up. So they hung it up. And even that was a mission. The scythe flashed a dangerous blue and was instantly weightless. Walking out the house he once called home, he set out to make his own mark. One which would be spoken of for generations, and not anything like his parents, which would be spoken of for a few weeks and then forgotten of. The legacy of the devil had begun. Snapping his eyes awake, Naruto found himself at an inn he was renting. It had been 5 years since that happened, and he would never have it any other way. He was now 16 but looked 20. His hair was slightly longer than what it was, which now reached the middle of his back. He had grown quite popular since his little show 5 years ago. He began killing Grim for a living with the occasional bodyguard duty, and was nicknamed Necrosis. He received this nickname due to his signature attack named Necrosis. This was the first ability he learned when he went his own way. He was attacked by some Grim who were attracted to his grim blood like moths to a bright light, and tried to kill him. But Naruto felt his aura spike and he flourished the ability to be used as a frontal attack. Stretching his palm out, he struck the one Grim in the torso and watched as the thing turned into a pile of cellular mush in a matter of seconds. He maimed the other Grim using Osiris. Most feared him, and some respected him. One day, he found a doctor who could help him with his little mental problem. Despite having accepted his Grim blood in him, he still had the insanity problem. He wasn't really the most stabilizing person to be around. The doctor gave him small white tablets that would help the incessant screams in his head stop. They worked. But not for very long. At least 10 hours he had of actually hearing his own thoughts. But even through all this pain and suffering, Naruto clung to the memories of Mito. The one who showed him happiness. He believed that there was a light at the end of the tunnel where he could be freed from the shackles of the screaming and insanity. But until then, he would swallow down the pills. With everything in his life, he did everything he could to hide the demonic arm of his. He hated the way the Grim blood mutated like it did prior to him becoming what he is now, even though he accepted this new power. But he hid it with the usage of bandages and sometimes a sling. This was not a problem as he could effortlessly dispatch Grim using only one hand to operate Osiris. As he climbed out of bed, he stretched his tired limbs and threw the curtains open. His body was lean and well crafted thanks to the many days and nights, training his body to be more effective in fights. After all, your body is your greatest weapon. Getting dressed, which consisted of a gray tank top, blue jeans and black combat boots, he grabbed a red trench coat which had the Union Jack on the left sleeve. He threw it on and made his way outside while grabbing Osiris and hefting it onto his back, which stuck there apparently. Paying for his stay at the inn, he made his way to get something to eat. Sitting down at a seafood joint, he ordered a cup of coffee, no milk and very strong. He also ordered some sushi. The one food he seriously enjoyed. It was also the one meal he shared with Mito when she was still around. As he ate, a man shrouded in a black cloak sat at the opposite end of the table. "A new mission, necrosis," he said, handing him a black envelope with the symbol of a scythe on the seal. Taking the envelope, he watched as the man got up and left. Sighing as he ripped out the letter, he read what was written down. It was yet another hacky-slashy mission. Sometimes he questioned if this was what he wanted. Sure, the killing of Grim was fun and all, but after your 1000th kill it gets boring. Naruto had slayed more Grim than any person that ever lived. He even destroyed Minato's record for the most Grim killed. Minato had killed a total of 250 Grim when he was at the age of 20. Naruto killed 300 at the age of 13. He truly was a monster, worthy of the title of being a devil. Not a demon like his parents. A devil that is avoided at all costs. But at least the pay was good. Some missions paid more than others, which was okay, but Naruto had never seen a mission that was below 1000 lean. Guess when there is a Grim in your house eating the insides of your lover, you pay up. And Naruto always went where the money was good. Sometimes he'd help out with people who were not in that margin. His good nature sometimes overruled his cold, sadistic nature. After finishing his food and paying, he made his way to where the mission stated, which was somewhere in some random forest. Finally making his way there, he spotted 4 other people making their way to the area he was about to go into. Deciding to see what they'd be doing, he sat down and watched. He didn't wait long as the area exploded with the Grim charging after them. The Grim in question was a Beowulf. This was getting interesting. But that was when his eye caught sight of a black bow on one of the heads of the 4. He'd recognize that bow anywhere. There was no doubt. Getting up and grabbing Osiris from his back, he charged forth and rammed straight into the Grim. The Beowulf was launched back quite a bit, and while Naruto's aura swirled around him, his eyes began to glow a violent purple as he stood there with Osiris resting on his shoulder. The 4 members stood there as they watched on at the man before them. But the one with the bow instantly knew who he was. You know, attacking people is one thing, but harming these fine young women is another, said Naruto as he increased his aura. The Beowulf charged again, only to have a scythe blade jammed into his side. The beast howled as it writhed about to try and get the blade out. But it didn't work. But that was when the scythe began to glow a powerful blue. Truth be told, the scythe fed off the energy of slain enemies. Or it could feed off enemies being killed. It was a powerful piece of weaponry. Swinging the scythe, Naruto sent the Grim into a set of trees and watched as the beast slowly got up. Smiling at this, he placed Osiris back onto his back and charged aura into his hands. That was when the 4 girls heard the screams of the power being generated. And at that moment, they realized who was before them. They had only heard stories but never actually seen him before. A devil shrouded in darkness. A being said to have sold himself completely to the darkness and became the embodiment of pure insanity. Sprinting at the Beowulf, he struck his hands on the skin and pumped his power into the beast. Seconds later, the Grim dissolved into a pool of biological mush. With the task now completed, Naruto sighed as he turned to the 4 girls with his eyes returning back to normal. That was when the one with the black bow approached him. Once she was close to him, she slapped him through the face. All the rest of the girls were shocked at what she did. But they were even more shocked at what came next. "That's for leaving me, you bastard," she hissed before bringing him into a kiss on the lips. Naruto wrapped his arms around her waist as she pressed her body against his, wrapping her arms around his neck and drawing him more closer. Breaking from the kiss, she gazed into his eyes as he smiled to her, his vicious long canines slightly jutting out his mouth. "And that is for staying in Vale. she added as Naruto chuckled. Why would I leave such a beautiful flower behind? He cooed with her, shrugging her shoulders while blushing a bit while he brushed some hair from her face. Blake, you know this guy? I mean, he's Necrosis. The legendary man who sold himself to the darkness, said the one with black hair with red in a few strands. You know him as that, but I know him as someone else, said the girl now known as Blake. Then who do you know him as? Asked the one with white hair. His real name is Naruto, and he and I were once boyfriend and girlfriend, said Blake with a smile as she leaned her head against his chest. The three girls stood there as the two before them cuddled slightly more than normal. They looked to have known each other more than a regular couple has, and they showed for affection than one. So they could only do what any other person would. WHHHHATTTTTTTTTT, they shouted as they stared on. Chapter 2. The Devil joins the Academy. As the team of girls stood there, watching their comrade Blake be all lovey-dovey with Necrosis aka Naruto, they had never thought that the usual quiet girl of the group would be like this toward a man that was considered a devil. Blake herself was on a different boat than her comrades entirely. Reuniting with her lost boyfriend had filled her with such joy that the only thing she could do was have her body against his as long as possible. A passerby would usually think that if she was trying any harder she'd be wearing him. But Naruto didn't care. As long as he had her, everything was okay. He too missed Blake when he left like he did, and the only thing on his mind other than the screams of his still growing insanity was her. He didn't like it when he left her like that, but he had to. He failed to mention that at the time he was being hunted by his family. They were seeking revenge against what he did. So that was the main reason why he left her like he did. Blake, how do you know this guy? Asked Yank, stepping forward. Well, it goes like this, started Blake, looking to Naruto only to giggle. Flashback. When Naruto was 14 at the time, he found the doctor by then. During the time where the White Fang were at their most weakest, Naruto was just walking about unaware of the territory he found himself in. It was only until he was ambushed that he realized the pickle he was in. But that was when his eyes landed on one of the people surrounding him. It was a woman with raven black hair and a black bow on the top of her head, but it was her eyes that intrigued him the most. She had the same eyes as him. The eyes that have seen hell itself. Just like his own eyes. State your name and surname, said one of them with a strange mask on his face and two horns on his head. They looked similar to his own horns, but only when he went into his beast mode. But Naruto's were longer and shot back quite a bit. Naruto, replied Naruto in a bored tone, never breaking eye contact with the chick in the bow. And your surname? Asked the man. I don't have one. My parents disowned me when I was young, so I don't need one, said Naruto. Do you oppose our ways? Asked the man. I only go where I can fight, said Naruto with the man standing down, which the others responded to. Then welcome to White Fang. We could use another heavy hitter, and with that scythe of yours we can do a lot of damage, said the man. You better make this a damn good fight, said Naruto as he followed them back home. As the days progressed, so did the winnings of White Fang. Ever since they brought in the new guy, they had been having more and more wins. It was like fate had drawn them the winning cards. But as the days also progressed, so did Blake's curiosity of the new guy get. One night she decided to go and speak to him about his ways and his past. Finding him sitting on a rock in the forest with the moon splashing him in a white spotlight, he sat there with a cigarette in his hands as he looked up. His left leg pulled up onto the rock and him supporting his weight on his leg. The scythe giving off a beautiful blue glow to it as it rested by the rock next to its master. And the same rock Blake sits on in the black trailer for Rwby. She had so many questions she wanted to have answered, but the number one question was why he covered his one arm. You know, it's not polite to sneak up on others, said Naruto, never breaking his sight on the moon. You know it's not right for a man your age to smoke, retorted Blake with Naruto chuckling. Touché, replied Naruto, blowing out more smoke. I just want some questions answered, said Blake with Naruto chuckling as he breathed in some smoke, then throwing his cigarette away. Don't we all? What's your question? Asked Naruto, looking at her. Earlier you looked at me with such curiosity. Why? She asked. You hold the same eyes as me. The eyes of those who have been through hell and back, said Naruto. Well, we have been fighting wars non-stop, so yeah, said Blake with Naruto nodding his head. Why do you smoke? Queried Blake. Well, the rule I follow is simple. When you have your first kill, you're considered an adult. And when you're old enough to kill, you're old enough to drink or smoke. And when you're old enough to drink or smoke, you're old enough to even have sex. That's why. To be blunt, replied Naruto with Blake slightly going red at the last thing he said. What's your story? Asked Blake. Do you want the long version or the short version? Asked Naruto. I'll take the short version, said Blake. Very well. I was born to a noble family, but while I was still in my mother, she ingested grim blood that affected me. When I was born, my hair was a snow white and my eyes came to be like this, as you can see. How I know I have grim blood was because when I awoke the grim blood in me, the fuckers swarmed to me like I was a big flame for moths. How I awoke it was because I was scroned and shunned for not being able to summon up my aura. Then my sister was born and she didn't have the grim blood in her like me. Long story short, I left my home and took my weapon as my inheritance. I never want to see those bastards again, said Naruto with Blake nodding her head in understanding. The main household always tries to produce a powerful heir, and it always isn't a nice feeling when the child born isn't the one they desired. So she pushed on with the next question on her mind. Why is your one arm covered? She asked. Promise me you'll tell no one of this, said Naruto gripping the cloth on his arm. I promise, said Blake. Slowly unraveling his arm, he looked to see Blake's face completely racked with fear. The sheer presence the thing gave off was completely something else. It was so ominous and completely full of hatred as the blue glow shone in the night while power flowed through the veins like it was a mini river in his arm. When I first awoke the grim blood in my veins, my arm turned to this. As well, my aura also awoke. I call my power, tainted aura, said Naruto only to have Blake place her hand against his demonic hand. I'm not afraid of your power. In fact, I like it, said Blake. And I quite like fondness. But none compare to the beauty of you. My little kitty, said Naruto as he pulled his arm from her grip and caressed her cheek with the arm, with Blake blushing at her nickname. It didn't take long until the leader of White Fang, with a large amount of help from Naruto, had liberated themselves and made their mark. But the cost of such a victory was a bloody one. They drank, they partied and held such brilliant vibes with one another. But then the rumors of what happened on the last mission surfaced. I heard Naruto is actually a Grimm in disguise, one person whispered. I also heard that he raped the captain's daughter while she was asleep, said another. How awful. He should be put down, said the group as they readied weapons. Naruto was found talking to Blake with a drink in one hand and a cigarette in the other. Their relationship had blossomed beyond compare and even enjoyed spending time with one another. But Blake was still unaware of the insanity in his mind, or that he was keeping it at bay with suppressants. As they talked with each other, the mob made their way to him. Turning to them, Naruto smiled while raising a glass only to find a hole in his chest with a gun being pointed at him with smoke coming out the barrel. The pierce of the gunshot stopped the party altogether. All because a bunch of idiots thought Naruto was evil. Why did you do that? Snapped Blake as Naruto dropped to the floor holding his head but not his chest, which was weird. No, don't come out. Not now, he said as he writhed about on the floor. What is this guy? Is he a demon? A monster? Asked one of them. The only person to know of Naruto's condition of his beast mode was Blake's mother. Naruto told her of his grim blood that ran through his veins and the various powers he had, including beast mode. When she saw him go down after the gunshot, she sprinted to her daughter as she knew the adrenaline would be surging through him right now. Callie surged to her daughter and pulled her away just as Naruto's body exploded in a surge of power that had purple lightning and black flames arcing all over the place. His skin turned gray and looked sickly. His hair turned black as night, as well his eyes turned to be a full black abyss. But it didn't end there. His nails grew to claws, his canines and 2 other teeth behind those grew longer and sharper, and out his head shot out horns to shot back. An Dark Jack from Jack 2 Renegade. This is Naruto's beast mode. Looking at those gathered before him, he got ready to attack. His rage festering like an open wound, much like the lightning and black embers shooting off his body. The men charged and tried their best to stop him, all the while screaming out, "Grim!" Naruto moved with such speed and finesse as he tore them to shreds. His mind blanked out from all the blood haze in his eyes. His mind racked with killer intent. His body screamed for blood to be spilt. And spill blood he did. In mere minutes, the people were dead and Naruto stood there as he slowly turned back to normal. His body staggered back as he dropped back first to the ground. Blake broke from her mother and caught the man she loved, his head resting on her lap as she ran her hands along his face. "I'm sorry," she kept whispering to him even though she did nothing wrong. When the time for everything to go back to normal, Naruto was sleeping in the room he used with Blake as per her request when she learned of his past. Stirring awake, Naruto looked around and found Blake to be in the armchair in her room. Slowly getting up, he alerted her from her sleep when he winced in pain. "I guess I did it," said Naruto with a sheepish smile. "Just what the hell was that?" asked Blake, walking over to the bed and sitting down. "It's called beast mode. I can only do it under extreme situations like the one just now. What happens is that my body reaches a certain level of stress from enemies, and when I've reached a level, I transform. I can transform at will. But sometimes it activates on its own," said Naruto, looking away. "You probably think of me as a grim, or a monster. IMPH. Naruto didn't finish his sentence as Blake brought her lips to his. His eyes widened as he felt her tongue prodding his own. But his mind melted as he wrapped his arms around her waist and drew her close by pinning her under him. "I want to be with you, and I want to remain with you," said Blake as she placed a hand on his cheek. "I would move heaven and earth for you. I will ensure that there can be a future for us," said Naruto, kissing Blake again. "Naruto, make love to me," she said, with Naruto meshing his lips with hers again. Flashback end. "You had sex?" queried an extremely shocked Weiss while Blake scratched the back of her head as a smile graced her lips. "We kinda didn't really plan on it, but yes, it did happen," said Naruto, with Blake nodding her head. "Well, is he good or what?" asked Yank, only to be hit over the head by her sister. "Don't say stuff like that. That's gross," said Rwby, with her sister shrugging her shoulders. "So, why did you stay in the Vale apart from me?" asked Blake, looking to her boyfriend, with Naruto sighing as he slammed the scythe into the ground. "Promise me you won't laugh," said Naruto, with Blake nodding her head that she won't laugh, with the others doing the same. "It's because I want to be part of a team. To be honest, doing missions and hunting Grim is fun. But it gets boring when doing it solo. That's why," said Naruto, with Yank looking away, trying not to laugh. "The legendary Necrosis. The most feared hunter and mercenary alive. Wanting to be part of a team. Now I've seen everything," said Yank, slightly letting a giggle escape her lips. "I think it's wonderful. Who do you wish to be teamed with?" asked Weiss. "With you girls," said Naruto. "Wait, what? But why?" asked Rwby. "You're the only team I've seen who shows compatibility with my own strength. I can train you if you wish," said Naruto. "Sure, we can do that," said Blake, with the rest of her team pulling her away. "What are you thinking? He could kill us all in our sleep," said Yank, slightly concerned for her friends and herself. "If he wanted to kill us, he'd have done it by now. Trust me. I've known him more than anyone else here," said Blake. "She has a point. Blake has known Necrosis, Naruto, longer than us. Hell, even fought alongside him once. I say we do it. We team up with him. Hell, he can show us few things here and there where we're lacking in our skills. Even give us an edge over a fight. Don't get me wrong, we have been a great team coming along here. But there is always more we can do," said Weiss. It was decided. Turning to Naruto, who was busy using his sleeve to polish the blade whilst also breathing on it. "Damn it, missed a spot," said Naruto as he went to clean the blade. "All right. We've decided. We'd love having you on our team, Naruto," they all said, with Naruto tucking the weapon on his back. "Awesome. Let's get going to your academy," said Naruto. "Awesome," said the four as they made their way back to Beacon Academy. "Speaking of which, why are you out here?" asked Blake, looking at Naruto. "Doing a job. Kill a Grim and get paid. There was someone living here," replied Naruto. "It must have been that scream we heard earlier," suggested Yank. Several hours later, after ceremony of assigning teams. "WWWHHHHHHATTT," said the headmaster, shooting out his chair. "Yes. I wish to join your academy and join these 4 girls," said Naruto, tapping his foot at how people responded to him always like this. "Are you sure you want to do this? I mean, with your current skills you could easily do it solo, Necrosis. Plus you do realize that you wandered into the Emerald Forest where we were busy doing the selections," said the headmaster, only to be grabbed by his shirt and pulled over the desk. "Listen very carefully. I am now Naruto. Should anyone find out I am Necrosis, then I am in big trouble. And yes, I did know. But some idiot lives in there," said Naruto, his tainted aura flashing off him. "I know that people only know of the weapon I use, and from there they realize who is before them, so I can change my weapon to be nearly anything. They'd never find out," said Naruto as Osiris shifted to be a very powerful-looking sword with a revolver's canister in the blade resting close to the hilt. A Enkanata Age's weapon from Sky Wizard Academy. Gladius. The weapon was balanced and looked so perfect. It had lines of white running along the sides and had a trigger near the handle. It even gave a Sinsider vibe to it. "Then by here on out, Naruto, you are a member of this school and your assigned team is Team Rwby, which will now become Rwbny, pronounced Rwby. Like combining Ruby and Ebony together for those of you out there. Your lectures begin tomorrow," said the headmaster with Naruto taking his leave. When the door closed, the headmaster sighed as he slouched in his chair. He sure as hell didn't want to incur the wrath of Necrosis again. Oh wait, Naruto again. He heard rumors on how he may have grim blood in his veins and how he sold himself to the darkness within him. Naruto was walking down the halls of the academy along with the others. Blake clung to him like there was no tomorrow. But then again, after never seeing the man whom you love so much, and give your innocence to, it does this to you. Naruto chuckled, bringing the 3 jealous girls out of their musings. "You know Blake. You will start giving people the impression that he are lovers," said Naruto with Blake looking him in the eyes while she stuck out her tongue. "Well, they can have that. Because if you remember, when we were 14 we had sex. So yes, we are lovers. Plus, I want us to start over," said Blake, turning back to her team and giggled. "I am more than fine with sharing him with you girls," said Blake, rocketing the girls back. "Come again," said Yank, with everyone gaining a face of confusion. "I don't mind, as long as I know who he's been with," said Blake. Chapter 3. The Devil's New Apprentice. With Naruto now part of a team, they made their way to their dorm. What they found was that they were right next door to Team JNPR, which consisted of John, Pira, Ren and Nora. But there was one team Naruto felt hostility and arrogance from, and that was Team CRDL, consisting of Cardin Winchester, Russell Thrush, Dove Bronzewing, and Skylark. He didn't like how they acted and he was very skeptical about that. He would be wise to watch them. Should they get out of line or out of hand, he'll be there. Finally getting to their dorm, the girls flopped onto the beds, which were 4 mind you, while Naruto chuckled at them. Yank was the first to notice this and got everyone's attention. "Where's he gonna sleep?" asked Yank, pointing at Naruto. "I'm fine with a futon and the floor," replied Naruto. "You can always sleep with one of us," suggested Yank, with everyone looking at her. "Are you nuts? What if someone walks in?" said Weiss, worried about her self-esteem at the fact that someone could walk in and see Necrosis in bed with one of them. Especially her. Her pride would be shattered. Rumors around the school would go around about her. She just couldn't bear that thought of exposure. Relax. When Naruto left his family, he learned how to survive with only the stuff around him. He is very proficient regarding survival, said Blake, with Naruto nodding his head. With that decided, they let Naruto sleep on the floor, with Blake offering that from time to time he can lay with her, in pajamas mind you. Don't want a student walking past and Blake having a mind-blowing orgasm. But he more took to a corner and rested Gladius by his side, and accepted the offer from her. But he kept himself awake just to wait for everyone to fall asleep. Hearing the 4 soft sounds of them sleeping, Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black tube with a rattling sounds being heard inside Siad tube. Popping the cap, he poured out the contents into his hand. Damn it. He only had 4 tablets left. He had to go and get more. He'd go tomorrow night. Putting 3 back and swallowing down 1, he leaned his head against the wall as a sigh escaped his lips as the pill began to take effect. How much longer must I suffer? Mito? Asked Naruto to himself, looking up, hoping Mito was looking down at him in paradise before he closed his eyes and let sleep claim him. Morning soon came around and Naruto woke up just as Rwby was about to blow a whistle in his face. On instinct, by mistake, he grabbed Gladius and swung the weapon, but Blake jumped in the way and blocked the attack. Realizing what he did, he ceased hostility and placed Gladius on his back and apologized. Due to living in such harsh environments with the constant threat of being killed in your sleep or when you wake, these tendencies were distilled into Naruto, regardless of how safe the place he was in was. That was also the reason why he was a light sleeper. But turns out Rwby and the others were awake before him. He let the girls get the room sorted out, with the finishing touch being that of bunk beds. Which wasn't bad of an idea. That was when they realized they were running late, and Naruto was nowhere to be found. All of them ran out the dorm rooms with Team JNPR hot on their heels. They found Naruto in the classroom and was also changed into the Beacon Academy clothes, and quite surprisingly, he looked damn good in it. But Naruto hated it. To him he looked like a clown. But that was when Yank grabbed his arm and smiled at him like they were past the friend zone. "I think you look dashing," said Yank as Weiss gasped in shock. "Yank, what are you doing? He's already in a relationship with Blake, remember?" said Weiss, with Yank sticking her tongue out. "I did say I was sharing him," added Blake, which caused Yank to stick her tongue out again. Getting settled into class, they began to chatter amongst themselves while Naruto sat with Blake sitting extremely close to him on his right and Yank on his left, also sitting dangerously close to him. "Right, class. Let's get on with the lesson," said the lecturer coming in. Naruto already knew enough about the whole hunter-huntress stuff, so he just switched off. He also had to thank Mito when he died, to have made him read all the family history archives. And reading those things gave him serious knowledge of the various tactics, styles, and even a few weaknesses of the various Grimm. When class ended, they made their way to grab some food. As they ate, Naruto polished off an apple, and then he switched to be so elegant and sophisticated while eating his food, which happened to be a steak. Also one of the things Mito taught him. How to conduct oneself at the table. But the polishing of that apple, he taught himself that the shine off that thing was like you needed sunglasses indoors. Looking over to John, Naruto and Pira both could feel sadness coming from him. "Sup, man? What's bugging you?" asked Naruto, with John shaking his head. "It's nothing. I'm cool," said John as Naruto arched an eyebrow. "What's really wrong?" said Rwby. "You're normally cheery and happy. What's wrong, is it Carden?" "He's bullying you again," said Pira. "He's just joking around," said John, with Naruto looking over to Afanis being bullied by Carden and his chums. Clicking his tongue at what they were doing, Naruto excused himself and walked over to the table of the Faunus. Tapping Carden on the shoulder, he awarded one hell of a right hook to Carden's jaw as soon as the boy turned to Naruto. Everyone was shocked at what they saw, and they were even more surprised that Naruto managed to knock him out. If the passed out person on the floor was any form of evidence to go by. A teacher came over and took the two of them to the headmaster along with the Faunus. He sat there busy sipping coffee while Naruto had a very dark look on his face. "Now, tell me, Naruto, why did you throw a punch at Carden?" asked Ozpin. "Because he doesn't like me," said Carden as he was now awake with a red mark on his face. "Shut up. I'm not talking to you," said Ozpin, looking at Naruto. "He was bullying this Faunus all because she is different. I don't tolerate people bullying others because they are different," said Naruto as Ozpin looked at Velvet. Velvet Rwby, not yet with Velvet Crow. "Is this true?" asked Ozpin. "It is," replied Velvet. "Carden, if I hear that you have been bullying a Faunus in this school, I'll pit you against Naruto, and he was trained by one of the best," said Ozpin, with Carden scoffing at the idea. "Like this pathetic wimp could take me. He is nothing compared to me," said Carden, with Naruto's hand grabbing Gladius resting on his back. "Wanna test that theory?" asked Naruto darkly. "I'd be glad to knock you down a few pegs," said Carden, with Naruto laughing so hard. "That's real cute, Junior. But I'll show you what actual strength looks like," said Naruto, with Ozpin sighing as he chose to let them have their match. It didn't take long for the entire school to be at the arena where Naruto stood there, Gladius resting on his shoulder. And think on how you hold the blade of Artemis in God of War 1. While Carden got his mace ready. This duel is to see who is the better fighter. The winner will be the one standing at the end, said Ospin over a mic. I hope you like doctors and hospitals. 'Cause you're gonna go there when I'm through with you, said Cardin with Naruto chuckling. Play world's greatest battle music ever, Avenger, Titan Slayer. I'll only use 3 of my finishing moves, and they are the ones chosen by me. If you're still standing after the 3rd finishing move, I'll admit that you are stronger than me. But if you fail to dodge the 3rd finishing move, you better hope your parents love you afterwards, said Naruto as they got ready. Begin, said Ospin. Naruto slammed down Gladius to have the blade tip face Cardin, who was already in full-blown sprint to him. All 6 bullet holders in the cylinder slammed up to have passed through the one side once. When that was done, Naruto charged up heavy amounts of aura into the weapon, which caused his aura to explode everywhere while 6 streams entered the bullet holders. Pyrrha, who was watching, gasped in horror as she leaned over the railing. What type of aura is that? It feels full of sadness and insanity mixed in with absolute hatred and pure evil, she said, trembling slightly in fear. It's Naruto's aura. He calls it tainted aura, replied Blake, looking over to her. Why does he call it tainted aura? Asked Ren. Dunno, lied Blake. Striker burst, said Naruto, firing a beam of red energy at Cardin. He merely smirked as he blocked it, but when it halved, it returned to come back at him. And so it went on. With every block he did, the energy would break in 2 and chase after him. Soon he was having full-on fights with well over 32 energy balls that never stopped. Thinking he had lost long enough, Naruto clicked his tongue and the energy vanished. Well done. You managed to stop my first finishing move. That would have finished any person. Glad to know you can hold your own. But then again, it was on its lowest setting, said Naruto, thrusting the sword out in front of him and charged up more of his aura. Blake's eyes widened at what he was about to do. This next one had a few levels in its attack. You could say, it was a warm-up to its finishing move. Variant. Bankai, said Naruto with his aura blasting everywhere. Struggling to hold themselves up from the serious power being produced by him, everyone held on for dear life. But then they saw it. Naruto was encased in his aura as a black sphere appeared around him. After a few minutes the sphere vanished away as if the fog had been lifted, with Naruto standing there in a completely different look. An Ichigo's Bankai. Tensa Zangetsu, said Naruto as he jumped fully into the air. He looks different now, said Weiss, with Blake nodding her head. This is Naruto's unique power, he calls it variant. By using half of his full power he enters a variety of powers he has. This is one such power. Tensa Zenjutsu, which translates, if I'm not mistaken, to Heaven Chain Slaying Moon. This form of the variant offers him an increase in strength, speed and overall power output by 500%. He can even increase it to be even more if he uses that. As well, from what he tells me about what Bankai means, it means full release, said Blake, with Nora raising an eyebrow. Use what? She asked. Just watch, replied Blake. Naruto, while in the air, moved his hand to be over his face. Blake instantly knew he was going to do that. Naruto pulled his hand down and instantly a white mask with what looked like 3 tear marks running down the sides under his eyes appeared, with his eyes changing to be black for the sclera and yellow for the iris. An took the new hollow mask he has and tweaked it a bit. For the tear marks, look at Khan's image, the lead singer of the Parlotones, but long like Ichigo's mask. Variant level 2. Hollowification, he said, with his power increasing by another 500%, with his voice becoming distorted. Naruto was a blur. His strength and speed was not of this world. Everything was happening too fast. Even Rwby thought Naruto was going even more faster than what she could accomplish with her semblance. And that was when Cardin began to realize just how outclassed he really was. Naruto appeared before him and slammed the butt end of Tensa Zangetsu into Cardin's sternum, instantly winding him. But Naruto wasn't done yet. Jumping back and placing his sword in front of him, similar to what he did with Variant Bankai, and pushed more power. What are you doing, Naruto? You can't be serious, shouted Blake. He was out of his mind to be using that attack. Nearly everything would be wiped out. Why would he use that? Relax. I won't hurt him, I'll just wind him, said Naruto, shouting back to her. Variant level 3. Final Getsuga Tenshou, said Naruto, with black mist kicking up around him, and once again he was encased in a black sphere. Once again the sphere parted, but it revealed a more different person. His hair was full black, a gray carapace covered his skin but not all of it. His eyes were full red as half his face was covered while his lower clothing was a black cloud like fire. Becoming one with one's powers. That is my power, he said looking up at Carden. Me. Becoming Gestuga itself, said Naruto raising his hand up with a smoking sword appearing in his hand. Mugetsu, he said as he brought it down. Everything around Carden was encased in black aura as Carden took the full brunt of the powerful finishing move. The audience was completely stunned at what just occurred before them. Naruto had just done one hell of a powerful strike on the enemy with just his aura. When the encased opponent was revealed, he was shown to be bleeding from his head while his one arm was useless hanging by his side. Not bad at all, said Naruto as his final Getsuga form vanished. But then again I did hold back considerably. The last finishing move will end you. Naruto raised up his Tensei-Zangetsu and made his other hand into a single-handed ram sign. Once again his power exploded around his body, but this time it trashed about violently as markings appeared all over his body. His sclera turned a full black as he pushed out more power. The aura gathered around his sword and turned it into a very powerful katana. The handle was white along with black on the handle while the whole blade was full black. Naruto's aura soon began to crackle and howl as his own shadow rose up to form a sort of stickman behind him while tribal flames rose up as well from his shadow. Variant. Cursed sword, said Naruto as his eyes became that of one who has lost his humanity. Placing both hands on the weapon, he put the blade to be on his right. Reel him in, said Naruto with his shadows shooting out and grabbing Carden. Carden was sent rocketing to Naruto while he stood there showing no form of care, and soon enough, Carden was found behind Naruto while his arms bled and were hanging by just a bit of skin. He soon dropped to the floor from blood loose. Shadow Star. Checkmate slash, said Naruto with his aura returning to him and his sword turning back to Gladius and the marks retreating from his skin. End song. Naruto slammed his weapon into the ground as he steadied himself, using 3 finishing moves while also going into so many variants, not to mention using Cursed Sword, which was a forbidden technique he used, really took it out of him. But he knew he could recover from this in just a few hours. You're done. And don't worry, they can be reattached. I made sure of that, said Naruto as medics came and took Carden away. Winner, Naruto, said Ospin with everyone cheering. With everyone congratulating him, he was once again slapped through the face by Blake. She didn't understand as to why he had to go overboard like he did. But nevertheless, she knew he had to show Carden just how strong he was. When the day ended, Naruto spotted Pira and John walking away to the roof. John was really down about something and Pira chose to give him a pep talk, so he followed them. Listen, John. You should have asked me if you want to learn more. You've been going like this for a week now. Tell me what is wrong. Is it that you can't do this? Asked Pira with John coming clean. I'm not good enough. I was not meant to be here, said John, shocking Pira. What are you saying? She asked. I forged some documents to get in here. My father, my grandfather and his father before him. All were powerful hunters. But I lacked the skills to be one. So I forged some documents to get accepted here, confessed John with the door slamming open. You may not have the skills to have been accepted, but I see promise in you, said Naruto with Pira agreeing with him. But I will just be a hindrance. I'm not at all good, said John only to be punched in the gut by Naruto. Pira was about to object when Naruto spun around and glared to her. Don't start, Pira, said Naruto before she could say anything objectful. You may be weak, but believe it or not, I started out like that as well. I was born to a noble family, but I couldn't call on my aura. I was labeled an outcast when my younger sister was born. She showed more promise when I failed at everything. It didn't take long for me to snap and then I awoke my power. You've had the privilege of awakening your power without snapping. I actually envy you in that. So I'll cut you a bargain, said Naruto, intriguing both John and Pira. What type of bargain? Asked John. I train you, and you stop acting weak, said Naruto. Pira had to admit it. It sounded very much of a good deal. John could be trained by Naruto and learn how to properly fight. Naruto was pretty powerful even though his aura was shown in a reckless manner, but he handled the situation quite well in his fight. Naruto would be able to mold John into a proper hunter. John accepted. "I will also help where I can," said Pira while John got up from the floor as he rubbed his stomach. "Are you sure about this? I mean, are you really gonna help me train?" asked John. "If I didn't want to train you, why would I be here?" stated Naruto. "You have a point," said John. It was decided. Naruto will train John to fight more better and also use his aura more better. Looks like Naruto had just got his first apprentice. Things were looking up for John. But that was when Naruto collapsed, but was caught by John and Pira. Uzumaki Namikaze main house. In the main house was one girl who was busy packing up her stuff. The place she was heading to was Beacon Academy. The signed documents sitting on her bed as she packed. Ever since she showed promise and enough skill, she was accepted there. And on top of that, she'd be placed into a team. Even though she was accepted late. Her hair reached the middle of her back and was tied in a single ponytail. Her eyes were a flush purple with a bluish tint in them. She had the body of the perfect athlete and even more so, was very cute for a girl of about 12 years old. As she packed away, her mother came into the room. It was Kushina. She was bound to a wheelchair to get around the house with the assistance of a maid. Her injuries were healing well, but it was still a long way to go. The incident that happened all those years ago were visible still. The doctors reckoned it would take another 2 to 4 years to get her back on her feet. The same was with Minato, but he was bedridden. "Good luck, Kasumi. And make our name shine like the stars," said Kushina, smiling to her daughter. "I will, mother. And I'll get revenge on the one who did this to you. My idiot brother will pay," said Kasumi with Kushina chuckling. "We are so proud of you. Have fun and make friends," said Kushina with her daughter slamming her suitcase closed. But what she didn't know was that while Naruto lived alone, he reached skills and powers so much higher than she could never achieve herself. Plus it had been 5 years since she last saw her brother, but she'll soon find out. End scene. Chapter 4. The Devil's Sibling and Arguments. Waking up the next day, Naruto was awarded with the sounds of some simple arguing between Weiss and Blake. They were busy arguing about the White Fang thing and Faunus in general. Naruto groaned as he pulled the blankets over him to try and get more sleep. Oh right. After Naruto's fight with Carden, Ospin gave him a futon and some blankets. Naruto thanked him for it and found it to be more comfortable. But the words being thrown between the two fighting girls only got worse as they became louder and louder. Growling under his breath, he reached over to Gladius, which had reverted back into Osiris, and threw it between the two girls with it hitting the wall and staying there. "Will you two shut up for a minute? Some people are trying to sleep here," spat Naruto, turning his back to them and going back to sleeping. But the arguing only picked up again 5 minutes into the silence. Groaning louder at how this happened, he just huffed in frustration and climbed out of bed and got dressed. Yang, who was sitting on her bed along with her half-sister, stopped their conversation and took one look at Naruto's back, which faced them as he got dressed. Yang was licking her lips while Rwby blushed and tried not to make too much eye contact. To put it simply, Naruto was pretty ripped, but not overly so. But enough to have him as the ideal man on a front cover of either a sports magazine or something along those lines. To put it thoroughly, Naruto's back was littered with a few scars here and there. But the most grueling one was the 7-inch scar running in the direction of his left shoulder down to his right kidney, and was also pretty deep too. This only added to the manliness and ruggedness of his being. Weiss stopped her argument when her eyes landed on Naruto's back as she gasped at what she was seeing. The large one very much caught her eye. As anyone would notice, that being the first one they'd see. Blake followed her gaze and landed on Naruto's back as he put a shirt on. The big scar, she remembered how that happened. Adam, one of the members of the White Fang, nearly killed an unarmed innocent civilian. Yes, the civilian was human and all, but Blake wanted none of it and wanted to not kill the civilian. They were to go in, clean up any hostile forces of human enemies, not slaughter innocents. In the end, Naruto blocked the strike. He used variant on himself to gain enough speed to make it in time. He stopped the blade. But he used himself as a shield to block it. He was unable to fight for 2 weeks, unlike humans who would either die from such an attack or be unable to fight for 3 months or so. 2 weeks was because the portion of grim blood in his body had mutated his healing factor to the point where he could heal slightly quicker than your average faunus or human. You could say he was a freak of nature. Another point of influence Naruto gave to his gift and curse running in his veins. It's not polite to stare, said Naruto looking over his shoulder, making the three look away. Naruto simply shook his head as he placed his shirt on. Seeing the distraught face on Blake as she argued with Weiss, he sat down next to Yank and Rwby as the two continued. What's going on? What did I miss? Asked Naruto with Yank and Rwby looking at him. Well, while you were passed out, we went to see the festival being set up. During that time we found a dust shop that was robbed. Weiss said something about the White Fang and this started the debate you're seeing, said Rwby with Yank nodding her head. And how long have I been out? Asked Naruto. 3 days, said Yank with Naruto clicking his tongue at her statement. Why did you collapse? You looked fine after your fight, said Yank with a puzzled expression. I call it aura fatigue. When I go all out like that, my body becomes numb for a few hours or minutes, and then I feel it. My body shuts down everything and I go into a coma-like sleep, replied Naruto. Well, you were considered to be in a coma. 3 times Weiss wanted to have you taken to the hospital to be treated, but Blake kept telling her, you were fine, said Yank with Rwby nodding her head. Getting up, he pulled his scythe out the wall and switched it to its gladius form again. They left their dorm room with them going about the veil while Blake and Weiss still argued, and they were still aggroing when Naruto decided to treat them to some ice cream. How they were able to argue with ice cream in their hands and still munch on it was something Naruto never understood. But as they walked, a certain bunny-eared schoolmate saw them while she and her team ate at a restaurant close by. When Velvet noticed Naruto, she instantly locked eyes on him as he walked by while sporting a blush on her cheeks. What's wrong, Velvet? Is it that cute boy again? Asked one of her teammates. It is. But he's taken, said Velvet looking down. You know, I heard his girlfriend state that she was willing to share him, as long as she knows who he's with, said Coco. Really? Asked Velvet, having the fire in her reignited. Really? So you still have your shot? Said Coco with Velvet now smiling as Naruto with his team rounded a corner. Making it back to Beacon, they saw a girl there with blood-red hair and a very nice figure on her that was that of an athlete. She seemed to be having a bit of trouble with her baggage, so Naruto, being a gentleman, made his way to her along with Yank and Rwby while Blake and Weiss continued what they were right now good at doing, arguing. Hello there, said Naruto to the girl, getting her attention. Need help? Offered Rwby. No, I got it, she replied, but when she picked up her bag the lock broke and all her stuff fell out. You need help, said Yank as they picked up her stuff. But as they were packing the stuff away, Naruto stumbled across a picture, and when he looked at it, his eyes widened at what he was seeing. In the photo was his mother and father with a hand on either shoulder of their daughter who was right before him. This one girl just so happened to be the one who was considered the prodigy in their house. The one who snitched about his and Mito's training. Kasumi Uzumaki Namikaze. His younger sister. Growling under his breath as he handed the picture to her, he closed the case and hefted it onto his shoulder. Thanks. This is my mother and father. They're crippled now, said Kasumi, showing the picture before pocketing the photo. I wonder why, mumbled Naruto. What was that? Asked Kasumi as she didn't quite catch what he said. Oh, I was just wondering as to how they wound up like that, said Naruto with a half-hearted chuckle. Well, I'm not an only child. I had a brother, but he was a pest. Always weak, always selfish, always trying to get attention. One day he went crazy and nearly murdered my parents. If he had done what he was told to, then this wouldn't have happened. And my parents would be seeing me off, said Kasumi, completely unfazed. Well, sorry for that to have happened, said Naruto. Not, thought Naruto with a stifled chuckle escaping his lips. Don't be. Because I'm gonna end him the next time I see him, said Kasumi, making a hand into a fist, but her eye-catching glimpse of his arm. Why is your arm covered? She asked, arching an eyebrow. I burned it badly when I was a child, said Naruto, grabbing his arm. I'm sorry to hear that, she said as they walked off. Taking her stuff to her room, which just so happened to be with Team JNPR, Naruto got settled down. But just as he was about to go into his own dorm, which was across from hers, she opened the door and smiled to him. I didn't quite catch your name, she said with Naruto sweating. Call me Nero, replied Naruto with a smile. Well, see you in the morning, Nero. And I'm Kasumi. she said as she closed the door and got introduced to her new teammates. Sighing as he slid down next to his futon next to the wall, he hung his head. His own sister was now in Beacon. Things were going to be harder to not let her find out. And with her seeking vengeance for what he did, which was an act of retaliation, things were seriously looking bleak for him. A nice big bullseye drawn on his back right there. And yet again, the two arguing never stopped, but that changed when Weiss turned to Blake. Everything was stolen from us, shipments, gone. My grandfather's company has had a target painted across its back for as long as I can remember, she said, making her way to the window. And ever since I was a child, I've watched family friends disappear. Board members, executed. An entire train car full of dust. Stolen. And every day, my father would come home, furious. And that made for a very difficult childhood. Rwby made her way to Weiss and placed a hand on her shoulder. Weiss, No, snapped Weiss, glaring at Blake. You want to know why I despise the White Fang? It's because they're a bunch of liars, thieves, and murderers. Well, maybe we were tired of just being pushed around, shouted Blake, with Naruto shooting to his feet at what his girlfriend just said. She had completely opened to the fact that she was a faunus. Realizing what she just said, she stormed out the dorm. Blake, come back, called Rwby, running to the door. Naruto hung his head. Cracking his knuckles at what he was about to do, was totally going against what he stood for. Normally I don't do this type of thing to women, but, he trailed as he walked over to Weiss and backhanded her through the face. Shocked at what he just did, Weiss held her cheek while being glared at by Naruto. I never hit girls. But what you said was just so uncalled for, and now Blake is tearing up because of it, most likely. Yes, you had a hard childhood. But be grateful you had one. Unlike some of us, said Naruto as he jumped out the window to look for Blake. What was that about? Asked Yank as they watched him move at incredible speeds to find his girlfriend. Dunno. But, what did he mean by, unlike some of us? Said Rwby, looking over to her sister. That I'm not sure about. We should ask him when he gets back, said Yank, with the remaining girls nodding their heads. With Blake. Blake could be seen running as fast as she could to the statue that resides in the middle of the school. Finally making it there, she cried as she looked up at the statue. Moving her hands over to the bow on her head, she pulled the ribbons and let her ears show. This was the second time she showed her cat ears. The first time was when she and Naruto made love to one another. Naruto requested it and she showed it to him. It was the first time she heard someone say that they liked her cat ears. I knew you would look better without the bow, came a voice. Blake turned around to see who said that. As well, this was the second time she heard someone say they liked her cat ears. Next morning, Rwby was found sleeping as she always was. Finally waking up, she looked to find Blake was still not here. Looking over at the futon, that was still rolled up, she knew Naruto wasn't in either. Gathering her comrades, they made their way to look around for Blake, as well as Naruto. But with both not even coming in, they feared for them. They've been gone the whole weekend, stated Rwby, with Weiss snapping with a comment. Blake's a big girl. I'm sure she could handle herself, said Weiss. Weiss, come on. She's our teammate, said Yank. They're our teammates. Naruto and Blake. Both of them. They're our teammates, said Rwby. I doubt Blake is. You heard what she said, retorted Weiss. Weiss, warned Rwby. Maybe she is. Maybe she isn't. Either way, she's missing, and we need to find her, said Yank, with Weiss scoffing. A member of the White Fang. Right underneath our noses, scoffed Weiss, not buying any of their camaraderie kumbaya shit. I just hope she's okay, her and Naruto, said Rwby. But right as they moved around the next corner, Naruto shot down from either the sky or the rooftops with black flames disappearing from his body. The three girls knew that that was Naruto's tainted aura when it materializes like that. Turning to them as his eyes turned back to normal, he approached them while they stood there while looking up. He had literally made a jump from the rooftops, with the building being over 6 stories high. I can't find her at all, and my beast sight needs to cool down, said Naruto. Beast sight? They questioned. Right. Thanks to my tainted aura, I've gained a variety of powers and abilities. I'll explain them when we find Blake, said Naruto, with them agreeing. Chapter 5. The Devil's True Strength. The group of girls, as they walked along, couldn't help but be concerned for Naruto. Bags rested below his eyes as they moved through Vale, and even his stomach growled like there was no tomorrow. Yang, being concerned for the one that had stolen her heart, asked him a question. "Wanna grab some food?" she asked, looking at him. "I'll eat when we've found her," hissed Naruto as he channeled his aura into his legs and shot to the rooftops. "How he's able to do that is beyond me," said Yang while shaking like a leaf to the way Naruto moved. "I think if Blake was here she'd say it's because of his grim blood," said Rwby as they looked on. They chose to carry on with their search and hopefully find their missing friend. But Naruto wasn't going to let his lack of energy and aura get the better of him. Sure, he knew the risk of using his powers excessively, but it just had to be done. Pushing in more of the last of his aura, he felt a sting deep inside his body as he looked around, with the entire area turning to black with waves of white being fired off everywhere while people remained as a red color with their beating hearts being seen. One problem for Naruto was that unlike other things like people having their life force shortened due to excessive use of their power, he faced a more different issue, a more cellular issue if you wish to call it that. His DNA. Every time he used his powers and abilities in an excessive manner, the more his DNA would become less human. Meaning his DNA would turn to be more grim-like. He would lose his humanity. He wasn't just ready to become a grim, he was hoping to not have it end like that. Finally making it to a rooftop, he scanned again to finally have found her. Deactivating his beast sight, he smiled, but then he stopped himself from going any further. He sensed the presences before but thought it was just some guy at a different table, but sometimes his beast sight did that. He still had to refine it. Sitting right at the opposite side of Blake was another Faunus who seemed to be having a very comfortable conversation with Blake. He was about to storm into there and tell the dude to back off from his girl. But then the backlash of the effects from using beast sight kicked in. Everything within a 2-kilometer radius could be heard. He covered his ears and he groaned in pain from the sudden increase in sound. But that was when he heard the man by Blake speak. "So, any other boyfriend? Or maybe a girlfriend?" her said. "I have some friends, and there is one," she said. "Oh, and is this one a?" trailed the man leaning in. "He's just a good friend," said Blake, with Naruto reeling back after what she just said. She considered him a good friend? After everything the two of them had been through, he was a good friend? Him giving himself to her, giving her everything to ensure she would remain happy. For what? To be a good friend. And that time he saved her on that train from that mech? To be a good friend? Walking away, Naruto felt his aura grow in hate. Black flames flowed off his body as his eyes grew more hateful and evil. He was right now considering having cut ties with Blake. Hell, maybe even leave Team Rwby for what she said. After all, the solo life was probably always meant for him. Don't care about anyone but yourself. When he was alone, he only had to worry about his own safety, not the safety of others. No form of attachments other than yourself. Night soon approached, and while Naruto tried his best to cool down, his mind wanted other things. This was proven as a small voice began to echo in his mind, which began to build with more voices. Popping the tube that held his pills, he poured out the contents only to find that only air came out. Peering inside to make sure none of the pills stuck to the bottom. Luckily he found one. His last pill. Fishing it out, he swallowed it down. He had to go see that doctor tomorrow. He could not afford to have his mind dip into the red zone. He remembered the last time his mind went into the red zone of insanity. He went into beast mode 3 times and killed 40 innocent people by mistake as a result. Oh, how that haunted him, which added to the voices in his mind. But that was when he heard the sounds of an explosion. Shooting into the air, he spotted several gunships flying around the harbor as they opened fire on a woman there with a Faunus with a tail. Oh shit, it was Blake. Landing on the ground and launching himself into the air as high as he could. He used his aura to surf in the air. He wasn't very good at it, but he was able to stay airborne for a few minutes. And think of how you glide in the prototype games, but instead of red mist coming from the arms, it is black smoke. Finally making it to the harbor, he launched himself once again as high as possible into the air and dropped like a rock when he reached maximum height. While he dropped, his left hand became an extremely deadly claw, while his eyes became the black abyss of his now stone-cold heart. There was no doubt about it. Naruto was going beast mode. As the gunships fired at the Faunus and Blake, Naruto shot down with such velocity and speed. He ripped one of the gunships straight through while a massive shockwave went off on impact. Cracks were seen below him as purple lightning sparked everywhere. His rage was now let loose when it was kept in check when in this form. Both Blake and the Faunus stopped what they were doing and looked to Naruto, who growled as he got up. Blake's eyes widened at what she was seeing. Doing beast mode in an area such as this will have serious repercussions. The destruction would be extremely intense. Grabbing Sun's hand, she took him and hid. "What's going on? Why are we hiding from that Grim?" asked Sun, peeking behind cover along with Blake. "Because that is no Grim. It is my boyfriend," said Blake with Sun looking at her. "Your boyfriend's a Grim?" said Sun, only to be whacked on the head by Blake. "No, stupid," said Blake as they went back to watching Naruto. A few Faunus opened fire on Naruto, but they couldn't even keep up with Naruto's incredible speed. 1 minute he was there, the next he was in front of one of them, having his heart removed through his chest courtesy of Naruto. Blood coated Naruto's face as he howled at his kill, signaling his mark. Charging forth at another, Naruto grabbed his arms and in one swift move, ripped them clean off and shoved them into the man's neck, killing him instantly. Torchwick was utterly shocked and scared at the Mosner before him. He ordered all gunships to target the beast. Miniguns flared to life as bullets flew towards Naruto with strict precision. Naruto simply roared in an unholy cry as his power sent a powerful shockwave that crippled all weapon systems aboard the gunships, while all bullets dropped to the floor with an audible clunking song heard. Rearing back and leaping into the air, Naruto began to slowly spin in a circle but soon crunched himself into a ball as purple energy leapt off his body and sky, destroying all gunships and troops still in said gunships. Torchwick was left utterly defenseless as he called the last gunship to pick him up. With all enemies now dead and all gunships destroyed apart from the one Torchwick was on, Blake and Sun moved out from cover and walked to Naruto, who slowly turned back to normal. But the definite hate-filled eyes remained as he glared at Blake. "Thanks for the help," she said sweetly to Naruto, only to him to snort at her comment. "Yeah, because I'm a good friend," said Naruto with a deathly glare. "What?" said Blake. "I heard what you said to this guy, at how I'm a very good friend," spat Naruto, with Blake realizing what he was saying. "After everything we've been through, everything I helped you with, that's all you consider me truly as a good friend," said Naruto, now starting to walk away but stopped and turned back to Blake when she spoke. "That wasn't you," said Blake in a soft voice. "Oh? Then do enlighten me. Who were you referring to?" hissed Naruto, with the purple lightning slowly arcing off his body. "I was referring to Adam. How he was a good friend before you began to do all those things. I mentioned to Sun beforehand that I was already in a relationship," said Blake, with Sun nodding his head. Naruto was now caught speechless. He had just falsely accused his girlfriend that she was thinking of him as a good friend when she said to Sun that she was already taken. He felt like a total ass, as anyone who's done that knows, looking down at how he just jumped to conclusions. Blake simply giggled as she embraced him. Naruto slowly hugged her back as he sunk his head into her shoulder. "Blake, I'm so sorry. I jumped to a conclusion that was completely out of line," said Naruto, with Blake giving him a kiss on the lips. "Relax. I forgive you. I will always be yours. Don't forget that," she said as he smiled lovingly to her as they saw their friends making their way to them. Making it to their friends and comrades, Blake was utterly shocked when Weiss walked up to Naruto and slapped him through the face. "What the hell are you?" she demanded as Naruto rubbed the red mark appearing on his cheek. 20 minutes later. Dorm room. Sitting on the bed as they talked about having their team back together, Weiss turned to Naruto, with Yank and Rwby doing the same. Naruto looked on along with Blake, gaining a confused expression. "Now, time to tell us what you are," said Weiss very condescendingly. "What do you mean?" asked Naruto, with Blake wondering the same thing. "Well, how about you tell us what the hell you became when you were at the harbor?" said Yank, with Weiss nodding her head. "Well, trailed Naruto, looking over to Blake, who nodded her head at how he had to expose what he was. "Well, tell us," said Rwby, hating being kept in suspense. "Well, I'm a human and a Grim," said Naruto, with the girls paling at what he said. "Whhhhhhhhhtt," said the girls, shocking everyone. Chapter 6. The Devil's Revealing. Sitting there as Naruto sighed to the four girls. He told them to sit down. But Naruto wasn't planning on just telling them. Getting up and grabbing John, Nora, Ren and Pyrrha, he locked the door and sat them down as well. "Why are we here?" asked Ren, looking as well to Nora, who wondered the same thing. "What I'm about to tell you is top secret. Should you tell anyone about this, my life is seriously over," said Naruto in a very cold tone. "But why are we here?" asked Pyrrha, looking to the girls. "It is because of this," said Naruto, pulling off the cloth covering his arm, showing them his demonic right arm. Everyone gasped in shock as they watched the warm blue glow shine in radiance before them as Naruto flexed the fingers while turning the hand at different angles to give them a nice view of it. "This happened to me when I was young. I was not able to call on my aura due to my mother. I say that because I was still in her when she was pregnant. She went into a fight and ingested grim blood that sprayed her face. It didn't affect her, but it did to me. When I was born, my entire body underwent a change. My hair and eyes changed to this. Over my days of being in my home, they tried so desperately to train me and unlock my power. But it was held back by the grim blood in my veins. They gave up on me entirely when my younger sister was born. She showed more promise and was considered a prodigy. Only one person in that house loved me and cared for me. Her name was Mito, my grandmother. She trained me and helped me. But when she died, I gained her weapon as my inheritance," said Naruto, grabbing Gladius and shifted it back to its original form as Osiris. "This is the weapon I was given," said Naruto with Ren's eyes. Well, everyone's eyes going wide. "That's the legendary Osiris weapon used by..." "No way," said John with Naruto nodding his head. "Yes, that's right. I am Necrosis," said Naruto, placing Osiris back down. "But why did you become a weapon for hire?" asked Nora. "Over the course of my childhood I lived in absolute scorn and hate. I never had a birthday where I was celebrated, only just a simple nothing. Absolute nothing was what they gave me. No cake, no presents. Not even a smile. Just a hateful look as a present and a shout or two as to why I'm still here as a nice thing to give me as well. They then decided to throw me into the basement, which was still a dungeon, as my home was built where a castle once stood. I was locked in one of the cells. Not even an ounce of food or a droplet of water came to me. I lived off the rats that took pieces of my skin away, and drank the cold dirty water that fell from the roof. It doesn't end there. Now Blake, I never told you this, but this is what happened," said Naruto, bringing out a pill tube. "What is that?" asked Yank. "Due to the constant isolation and hatred, my mind fell into insanity. My mind was ravaged by screams and laughs that never stopped. I almost had nights where I would never have a wink of sleep. It still is present to this day," said Naruto. "But on the day of the celebration of my sister, I lost it. I awoke the grim blood sleeping within. My right arm turned to this and I gained near impossible abilities. The most strongest form I gained was one called Beast Mode. It allows me to transform into a monster and tear anything apart. I also gained a few other powers. I exacted revenge against them, crippling my parents. I left and took my weapon too. I then made my decision to make my own mark on the world. Far better than what my parents could ever dream of. That is how I became Necrosis," said Naruto with them understanding. "But what does it feel like when you go into your beast mode?" asked John. "It feels like I have this itch. An itch that won't go away the more I scratch. But that is only when I don't call on it intentionally," said Naruto. "Are there any drawbacks?" asked Pyrrha. "Yes. The more I use my power in an overused state, the more my blood turns to be grim," said Naruto. "How much of your blood has changed already?" asked Weiss. "When I awoke, 1/10 of my blood turned grim. Right now I'm at 1/4, said Naruto. "Have people ever feared you when you use that power?" asked Rwby. "You know, she means that beast mode you have," added Yank. "He is feared by many, but to me it just goes to show just how far he's willing to go to protect us. Willing to become a monster, just to protect us," said Blake with Naruto nodding. "This is all good. But you mentioned you had a sister. What was she like?" asked Pyrrha. "You just met her. The new girl who is on your team," said Naruto with them gaining shocked expressions. "That chick is your sister?" said Nora with Naruto nodding his head. She is. She is so hell-bent on killing me because of what I did to our parents. She thinks I am to blame for everything, said Naruto. So what do you want us to do? Asked John. I want you to keep quiet about this. I don't want her finding out that I am her brother. If you can do this for me, I'll be in your debt, said Naruto. You have my word that I will keep this secret, said Pira with John nodding his head. Thank you. All of you, said Naruto grabbing the cloth and wrapping his arm up again and changing Osiris back to Gladius. Leaving the dorm, Weiss, Rwby and Yank looked over to Blake and Naruto as Naruto sat down and pulled out another pill tube, popped it open and swallowed down another pill. Blake got up and stared Naruto in the face. Naruto sighed at what he was expecting. You're insane? She said in an extremely concerned voice. I'm sorry, but yes I am. Though I keep it in check with these pills. I found a doctor who can help me keep the insanity in check, said Naruto pocketing the tube. Have you ever run out? Asked Yank with Naruto shaking his head. I haven't and I don't want to experience what it feels like to go without a pill, said Naruto. You've been like this for all your life. You said that I should be grateful I had a childhood. I see why now. You never had a childhood, said Weiss with her approaching him. If I had unlocked my power when I was younger, I'd not be in this mess, but I see it as a gift more than a curse, said Naruto surprising them. How come? Asked Rwby. Because if I hadn't gone insane and become part grim, then I wouldn't have met any of you. Gaining a relationship with Blake or starting something with any of you either. I am grateful for this moment, said Naruto with them all blushing. You clearly know what to say to a woman, said Yank with Blake nodding her head. He knows his way around women. That's why, she said with Naruto chuckling. Weiss then did something the girls never thought she would even consider of doing. Weiss grabbed Naruto by his trench coat and pulled his face to hers and she meshed his lips with her own. Naruto was bone back completely as he soon felt her tongue prod his own. But his mind melted as he wrapped his arms around her waist while her own wrapped around his neck. Both now drawing each other closer as Naruto soon backed her against the wall. Blake just stood there, unfazed that her boyfriend was sucking the face off another woman, but then again, she stated she would gladly share him. But she must know who he was with. So this was completely fine. But she wouldn't lie either. She expected this type of advancement from Yank but not her. Weiss was always the one to hang in the background and make a lot of noise getting everyone's attention. It was also refreshing to see that she had someone on her mind and not just her self-esteem. Breaking from the kiss with a chain of saliva connecting them still, Weiss smiled to him as she placed a hand on his cheek. While Naruto's hands moved to be on the sides of her waist. Always wanted to do that, she cooed while Naruto smiled cockily. Nice to know you have a side like this, he retorted. Well, be sure to be prepared, because we'll be doing that very soon. She purred in a whisper as she brought her lips to his ear. That would be a romance novel I'd enjoy reading. The Commoner and the Princess, said Yank picturing the steamy scenes in her head while the father was unaware that his daughter was being unfaithful to his wishes of keeping her pure. No kidding, said Blake picturing the same. Whatever, said Rwby breaking the moment with that line. Chapter 7. The Devil's New Semester. Waking up the next morning to find everything beautiful and lovely, he slowly got out of bed and put on his clothes and ensuring the bandage didn't slip off while he was asleep. As that happens sometimes, slipping out he was stopped by Kasumi who was exiting her own room and turned to him with a smile. Morning Nero, she said cheerfully. Morning, said Naruto with her trotting off to who knew where. Shaking his head as he felt a slight but sharp shot of pain within his mind with a small whisper echoing deep within his thoughts. Huffing under his breath as he reached into his coat he fished out the pills, popped the cap and grabbed a new pill. Swallowing it down he made his way to get some training done. Oh, that reminds him. John and Pira were to be trained today as well. Making his way to the arena that Ozpin ever so kindly let him use due to him not wanting to be on Necrosis' bad side. Seeing Pira and John there, he cracked his knuckles as they turned to him. About time you showed up, said John. I'm ready to train, said Pira. Getting their training underway, Naruto decided now was a good time to teach them how to use aura in a way never seen before. Learning some of the old ways, he learned that aura could also be used as a weapon and not a way to always buff yourself up. So he did just that. Slamming his hands together with a loud clap echoing across the arena, he began to push aura into his hands as the sounds of crackling lightning boomed in his hands as he pulled them away slowly. As he did that, John and Pyrrha marveled at what they were seeing. In Naruto's hands was what looked like a string of powerful lightning being generated that was black and full of destruction. Bringing his right hand up, he swung down fast as he moved his left hand out the way as the sounds of a whip being cracked echoed across the arena as a scar on the ground was seen where the whip struck. This is an ability I created on my own. I call it Lightning Whip. By focusing my aura in this form, I create an extension-like weapon where I can strike foes with incredible speed and strength. I can even take it to the next level, which is called Lightning Claws, said Naruto as he grabbed the whip and literally ripped it apart, creating two whips that morphed to where his hands were laced with lightning. Swinging his hands around, they watched in awe as from the tips of his fingers shot out a string of electrical energy that sounded exactly like a whip being cracked again. Amazing, said John. Now, I want you, John, to try this. Pyrrha, I'll be teaching you how to fight more effectively, said Naruto as the lightning died out from his hands. John nodded his head as he went to work on getting the idea on how to use it while Pyrrha got out her weapons. Naruto grabbed Osiris, which was Gladius when He was around Kasumi, from his back and got ready to attack. Both of them struck in the middle as a small shockwave went off from the impact. Naruto smiled cockily at her while she held a face of a warrior. Ducking under her, he swung Osiris at her. She used her semblance to stop the incoming blade but became shocked when Osiris flashed a cyan blue and proved to her that her block was ineffective. Jumping back from the scythe, she stood there, dumbfounded that her semblance didn't work on the weapon. Naruto just chuckled to himself as he hefted Osiris onto his shoulder. Wondering why your little trick didn't work? Simple. Osiris sometimes has a mind of its own. Semblance will never work on it. Be it polarity or whatever. The weapon will flash blue and render the semblance null. Allowing me to still hit you, said Naruto, with Pyrrha clicking her tongue at how she couldn't use her semblance to block attacks from Naruto and Osiris. But then she had a brainwave. Change your weapon, she stated. Okay, said Naruto, clearly seeing where she was going with this. Getting in a stance that had him using Osiris to block, his body burst into flames as his aura pulsed off his body. Tongues of flames lapped along his body as his eyes flashed purple. Variant. Rebellion, said Naruto with his aura encasing his weapon. The aura casing Osiris became solid and Naruto lifted the huge square block above his head and smashed it on the ground. The block shattered into millions of pieces as a wicked-looking sword rested in Naruto's hands while smoke gathered on his hips to form holsters holding two pistols. One full black and one full silver. The weapon itself was a large claymore that had a skull and ribcage on it. The skull itself had its mouth slightly open as if it was giving out a silent scream. Lifting the weapon onto his shoulder, he smiled at Pyrrha as he saw the look on her face that showed that she thought she had him right where she wanted him. Charging again, she swung her weapon as she used her semblance to keep the weapon at bay. But she failed at that as the weapon flashed a midnight black and Naruto blocked the strike easily. Grabbing the silver pistol on his left with his left hand, he pulled the trigger. Pyrrha narrowly dodged the bullet as it zipped past her neck and jumped back a few feet while Naruto chuckled slightly. Oh, I failed to mention. Regardless on what form Osiris takes, the weapon will always stay the same inside. Meaning it can still cancel out semblance attacks on it, regardless of the form, said Naruto. Clicking her tongue in frustration, she charged again and let loose a volley of strikes and swings at Naruto, who dodged and blocked them effortlessly. Pyrrha was seriously hating to not be in this situation. On any normal attack, she'd have him pinned. But then again, she was up against Naruto, who was also known as Necrosis, the legendary Grim Slayer and mercenary. Jumping back and charging full force, she managed to get Naruto's weapon out the way only to have a pistol pointed at her forehead at point-blank range. Checkmate, said Naruto while Pyrrha scrunched her eyes tight waiting for the gunshot to sound. You've got considerable talent. Only 2 people could get me to pull out the pistol out to defend myself. You're the other, said Naruto, pocketing the pistol. Who was the first? She queried. A Grim. Or should I say a Nevermore, but then again I got cocky then, replied Naruto as he cancelled out his variant power and returned to normal. Glad to know I could do that, said Pyrrha. Turning to John, who had managed to get his aura to be channeled into his hands, they found him to be struggling to get the desired effect as he grunted in frustration at failing to get it to work. "You're looking at it all wrong," said Naruto as he placed Osiris onto his back. Lightning Whip is meant to be used as a means of fast strikes. As you see with thunderstorms, lightning is quick and powerful. The same rule applies here. Channel your aura into your hands, and then spread them as fast as you can. This creates the body of the whip," said Naruto as he created Lightning Whip in his hands. "Here's a trick to help you. Rub your hands together to create friction to gain the electricity needed while channeling aura into your hands. Try it. Once you begin to feel some sparks in your hands, pull one hand away fast and there you go," added Naruto as he cancelled the ability. Doing as he was instructed, John channeled his aura back into his hands as he rubbed his hands together. Soon he began to feel small sparks of static electricity in his palms. Pulling his right hand away as fast as he could, he soon found a long whip made of gold lightning resting in his left hand. Pulling back and thrusting his hand out, he was awarded with the sounds of a whip being cracked echoed through the arena. Cancelling the ability he had just learnt, he turned to find Naruto clapping at him with a smile plastering his features along with Pira. "Well done. You've learned how to create your own lightning whip," said Naruto as he heard John's and Pira's stomachs rumbled with them groaning at not being fed. Naruto just chuckled as he shook his head. "I guess we should call the training for now. Come on, let's go eat," said Naruto as he shifted Osiris back to Gladius. Finally getting to the food court, they sat at their tables. Sitting opposite Blake, he watched as she drew some pretty pictures. Taking a closer look, he saw she was drawing his beast mode. While one in the corner was that of his with his back turned with Osiris resting his back, but the picture that stuck out for him was the hydrangea flower. The one flower that was so beautiful, yet so poisonous should someone eat it. Leaning over to her, Yank asked her what she was up to. Slamming the book closed, she said she was just going over notes from last semester. Just as they were about to continue, Rwby came to the table and dumped a book that was the equivalent of a Bible onto the table. "Sisters, friends. Weiss," she started with Weiss chirping about what she said. 47 minutes ago, I had a dream," she continued. "This ought to be good," chirped Yank before detaching some food with her mouth and eating it. "A dream that one day we would come together as a team and have the most fun anyone has ever had." "Ever," finished Rwby with Weiss glaring at her. "Did you steal my diary?" she asked. "I am not a crook," said Rwby. "What are you talking about?" questioned Blake. "I'm talking about kicking off the semester with a bang," replied Rwby. "I always kick off my semester with a yawn." Pipped up Yank with Naruto shaking his head at the pun implemented. But he soon had his interest piqued when an apple hit Yank in the face. He couldn't help but let off a chuckle as Nora booed her. "But guys, it's been a good 2 weeks. And between the new students coming in and the tournament at the end of the year, our second semester is gonna be great. But classes start back up tomorrow. So I've compiled a list of fun activities for us to do," said Rwby with a smile. "I don't know whether to be proud or scared of what you have in store," retorted Weiss as Yank threw a green apple at someone with Nora laughing at what happened. "I don't know. I think I'm gonna sit this one out," said Blake as she looked glum. "Sit out or not. I think however we spend this last day, we do it as a team. I for one think that." Weiss didn't even finish as she was hit square in the face by a pie. Everyone including Naruto stood or sat shocked as the pie slowly slid off her face only to show a very pissed of Weiss. "Here it comes," said Naruto slowly backing away. Turning to whoever threw that, they found Team JNPRK, AN Kasumi is the K for those of you who are slow, looking down while Nora was found pointing at Ren. This was gonna be a massacre. Naruto could see that. Just outside, Sun and his close friend Neptune were busy discussing the things that happened the night before. But he kept the knowledge about Naruto having grim blood or the fact that Naruto used his beast mode out of the details. Getting sorted out, they entered in with everyone running out while Nora and her team stood on a mountain of tables and drink Mach 1s while Nora chanted that she was the queen of the castle. Rwby slammed her foot on the table as she thrusted out her hand while a milk carton was held in her other hand. "Justice will be swift. Justice will be painful. It will be delicious," she cheered as her team, including Naruto, shouted out at the taste of victory. No pun intended. Off with their heads. Order Nora as she dropped down from her spot and landed behind a table with some melons on it. Juan threw 1. Pyrrha threw 2. Ren kicked 3 and Kasumi threw at least 3. Nora kicked up the table, sending the melons flying to them. Yang. Turkeys, said Rwby as her sister bolted to the 2 turkeys laying on the ground. Slamming her fists into them, she went to work while Naruto backed her up as he grabbed a chain of pork bangers. As Yang battled with the incoming foods, Naruto charged forth as Kasumi too charged off to meet him. She grabbed 2 stalks of celery. Fancy meeting you here, she chimed as Naruto spun the sausages around him. Likewise, retorted Naruto as he went in to attack. Swinging them around as if it were a real chain, Kasumi found herself on the defensive rather fast as Naruto was relentless in his strikes. She lost 1 stalk rather fast and soon she was blocking the other strikes with only 1 left as Naruto kept swinging the bangers around. Wrapping her waist with them, he pulled her to him and smiled to her evilly. "This is where we part ways, love," he cooed as he pushed her so hard she hit a dispenser and was knocked out. Unfortunately, he wasn't paying attention and was knocked back by Ren. Watching as Weiss grabbed a salmon and Nora and pipe with a melon on the end, they began their attack on each other. But Weiss was soon overpowered and was sent back into the pillar. She was soon caught by Rwby, who used her semblance to catch her falling friend. Looking over to Blake, he nodded to her as they charged again. Blake grabbing some French bread and Naruto some soda cans. Shaking the up, he threw them as hard as he could and watched as they went off upon impact similar to that of a grenade. But they were overpowered as Pyrrha used her semblance and made all the cans on the ground to hit them in one big tidal wave. Rwby, clearly having enough of this, used her semblance and charged strong, kicking up everything in around her to create a torrent of food. The force of the wind being drawn kicked up the opposing team, bringing them to end against the wall as the encroaching food finished them off. Everyone got up and high-fived each other as Glinda came in with a scold on her face. Using her aura, she fixed up everything and gave a lecture to the students that they should respect the food court. While Ospin stated that they should enjoy their youth while they still have it. But that was when Yang dropped from the roof after being sent into the sky from Nora earlier. Giving a thumbs up, she smiled and walked off along with her team and friends. But as they walked, Naruto felt that his girlfriend was acting a little off and distant as of late. Deciding to ask her about it later, he excused himself from his friends and made his way into the city. Pyrrha, being a little nosy, decided to follow the hunter. Keeping a far distance but not too far as to lose sight of him, she tailed him to the store labeled "From Dusk Till Dawn." But as he entered the shop, she went to the window and found him nowhere to be found inside. "Shouldn't you be doing something else other than stalking me?" came a voice behind her. "Bloody hell. Don't do that to me," she said as she spun on her heels to come face to face with Naruto. "Why are you following me?" asked Naruto, raising an eyebrow. "I just wanted to know where you were going," she replied. "I'm here for a personal thing," he replied as he walked inside the store with Pyrrha following him. "Ah, welcome to From Dusk Till Dawn. How can I help you?" asked the shopkeeper. "Black Night. Star Sky. The Devil's Cry," replied Naruto. "Of course, sir. He's in the back," replied the man as he went back to work as if nothing happened and as if he never met Naruto. "What was that?" whispered Pyrrha. "A little phrase I gave to the guy who works at the back here. I helped this guy with his little business and asked if the doctor who supplies me with mental pills works at the back. He agreed and now this is the case," responded Naruto. Opening the door, fluorescent lights flickered to life as a man was seen at a desk mixing some chemicals together as his back was turned to them. He wore a traditional white lab coat as he hummed to himself with some opera music playing from a radio. Running along the walls on either sides was cabinets of shelves with various chemicals and elixirs on the shelves in the cabinets. Making it to the counter, Naruto rung the bell with the man turning around. His hair was cut short and he had magifying glasses over his eyes and a light on one of the arms of the glasses. In his one hand was a beaker with some green liquid in the one, a purple liquid in the other. The front of his shirt was coated in stains, no doubt from spilling some of the contents. "Ah, if it isn't my best customer," he said in a creepy voice. "Yeah, whatever. Just give me the pills," said Naruto in a demanding tone. "And who is this? A mistress? Lover? Or maybe your wife?" he said with Pyrrha going red with embarrassment. "Drop it and just give me the pills," said Naruto with a growl. The doctor just chuckled to himself as he placed the beakers on the table and unlocked something under the desk. Coming back up, he placed a green tube on the counter with Naruto opening the tube with a popping sound going off. Pouring the contents into his hand, he counted at least 20 pills. Looking to the doctor, who now sported a very creepy smile as he looked over to Pira, who hid behind Naruto. Naruto poured the pills back into the tube and closed the cap. "How much this time?" asked Naruto in a cold tone. 100 lean. He replied. "Bullshit. Last time you gave me the same amount for 50. Replied Naruto with the doctor chuckling awkwardly. "Well, demands have gone up. You should know this by now, Striker," he replied. "Striker?" asked Pira, looking at Naruto. "A surname I came up, but I never used it as I thought it was dumb," said Naruto. "I think it has a good ring to it. Naruto Striker," said Pira, playing it over and over in her head. "Whatever," said Naruto with a sigh as he reached for his wallet and pulled out his card. Handing it over, the doctor swiped the card and the transaction was final. Walking out while he pocketed the new tube of pills in his trench coat, they made their way back to Beacon and settled in for the night. Tomorrow would pose a lot more challenges. That was for sure, as students would be flocking in for the tournament. End scene. Chapter 8. The Devil's Date and Transfers. Sitting on the bed as she held her knees close to her chest, Blake played the events of what happened that night. She still couldn't believe as to why the White Fang was working with a human. The White Fang despise humans. They more see a means to resort to violence to get a message across than ally with one. But then again, Naruto was a different card put in the same deck, as he was shunned by a group of humans who were his parents. So he, in a sense, hated humans. Well, not humans entirely, but just his parents. But now his sister is beginning to get under his skin. Wait, what was she thinking again? "Still thinking of that night, huh?" asked a voice from the door. Looking up, she saw Naruto standing there as he closed the door and made his way to her. Scooting over to her, he pulled her in to where her head was leaning against his shoulder with her hidden cat ear against his chest, hearing the slow heartbeat of his body. "It just boggles my mind as to why they would fight alongside a human," said Blake. "If you remember, I was human, and I fought with you," said Naruto with Blake lifting her head. "Yeah, but you're different. When I spoke to you that night in that forest, you told me that you don't hate anyone, apart from your family. You don't discriminate my kind but accept them. Even when you went into your beast mode like that, I still accepted you just as you accepted me. But I still don't know why the White Fang would do that. Ally with someone like him?" said Blake, only to be grabbed by the shoulders from Naruto. Gazing into his eyes, Blake found him to be extremely concerned about her. She had never seen this side of Naruto before. She had seen him fight, she had seen him get mad, but this was something entirely new. To her, this was refreshing to see him like this. That he really had a heart and didn't just want to fight and be all serious face. "Blake, we'll learn why they're busy being like that. But please, you're beginning to scare me. You're being more distant and very docile. You haven't eaten one bite today. Please, just slow down. Just let this go for now. We'll sort it out when we have to," begged Naruto. Sighing as she lowered her head, she began to think about it. She had been very distant lately, and she hadn't really spent that much time with Naruto and her teammates as of late. Looking back up as she looked him in the eyes, she grabbed his face as she meshed her lips with his. Wrapping her arms around his neck and he himself wrapped his arms around her waist, they deepened the kiss as Blake shifted to be sitting on his lap. Soon sounds of the two of them kissing were filling the room as the two of them exchanged saliva, swirling their tongues in each other's mouths as their hands roamed over each other's bodies. But breathing soon became necessary and they broke from the kiss. Gazing into his eyes while she felt his hand move to stroke her hair, she smiled to him as she placed a hand on his chest. "Okay, I promise. I'll put this on hold, but we'll be dealing with this regardless as soon as something comes up," stated Blake as her boyfriend's lips tugged to form a smile. "That I can live with," said Naruto with Blake climbing off him. "Shouldn't you be getting ready for your date with Weiss?" she said with Naruto chuckling before reaching into his trench coat pocket. "Don't worry about that. I'm way ahead there," said Naruto, popping the cap and swallowing down a tablet. "Get some rest, my kitty. You look like you need it," said Naruto, closing the door. As he turned around he bumped into a woman with charcoal black hair and piercing yellow eyes accompanied by a man with matte violet hair and dark silver eyes as well as another woman with green hair and deep red eyes. All of them wore full black uniforms with a white band on the one arm. "Excuse me," said Naruto as he pardoned himself with the woman he bumped into looking at him. "No worries. No harm done. But be more careful next time," said the woman. "Sure. But transfer dorms are on the other side of the campus," said Naruto with them walking off. "Well then I guess we were moved," said the woman turning to him as they walked. "Oh. Well, see you later," said Naruto walking off but making a mental note to watch them. Making it to the main entrance of the school, Naruto found Weiss waiting there as she leaned against the wall with her arms crossed. She seemed to be lost in thought as she looked up at the clouds that passed by. Stopping next to her and clearing his throat he watched as she jumped up from getting a fright as Naruto smiled to her. "Relax, it's just me," he said raising his hand to indicate surrender. "What took you so long?" she said in a huff. "Well, busy sorting out my girlfriend is not an easy task when she sees her old comrades busy fighting with a human," replied Naruto with Weiss arching an eyebrow. "But you're human," stated Weiss. "Well, yes and no," said Naruto indicating to his covered arm with his eyes. "I see your point. Well, come on," she said as she grabbed Naruto's arm and took him to the city to begin their date. They went everywhere. But for a rich kid like Weiss, she had very expensive tastes in clothes, and to be honest, with the amount of money Naruto had in his account, he wondered if there'd be anything left in there. If not, he may have to do some grim hunting missions to get his account back. But thank goodness they went to go see a movie and then went to a restaurant. Sitting at a double-seated table, Weiss ordered some tea while Naruto ordered some coffee, no milk and very strong. Looking at him at how he could order something like that, Naruto shrugged his shoulders before explaining. "It's just the way I like my coffee. Strong. That's all," replied Naruto. "What's your favorite food?" asked Weiss. "Sushi." "You?" asked Naruto. "Anything healthy," she replied. "I see. So, tell me a bit about yourself, Weiss," said Naruto leaning in as their drinks came to their table. Weiss went on to explain on her family and what they have been through. As she talked, Naruto began to find a very strong similarity between his past and her past. To him it was like he had found yet another Blake. But seeing everything from her eyes, was getting both sides of the story. Which meant that if he wanted, he could come to a solution to the whole Schnee Dust Company and the White Fang conflicts to come to an end. But that would have to be put on hold with the whole mystery behind Torchwick and the White Fang joining forces. "Wow. You've been through a lot," said Naruto with Weiss nodding her head. "Yup. Growing up was a hard thing to do. But hurting from you that you never had a childhood. As well, I'm sorry for everything I said about Blake," said Weiss with Naruto taking her hand into his. "Relax about it, my snow angel. You didn't know. Plus, you should say that to Blake. Not me," said Naruto with Weiss agreeing with him. Concluding their date, they made their way back to Beacon. While Weiss retired in for the night, Naruto made his way to the arena. As he walked to the arena, he failed to notice that someone was following him from the shadows. From her shadow lining, the person was a female. Finally getting there, Naruto stopped in the center and sat down in a meditation setup and closed his eyes. His stalker soon made herself to the stands of the arena just as Naruto's aura exploded around him and moved about as the black flames imitated the way water moves around him. Under Naruto, a circle appeared with what looked like 3 swords forming a triangle with a flower in the middle. A sound soul dwells within a sound mind, and a sound body. All power is given, yet taken. It is both the mother that gives birth to all, and the serpent that devours everything. Reveal that which is hidden, as well as that which isn't," he said as his eyes opened as markings slowly grew across his skin. Opening his eyes, they were completely void as a black abyss had replaced his eyes. The person up in the stands gasped at what she was seeing and this alerted Naruto. Instantly his power vanished and Naruto disappeared from sight. Instantly he was behind her with Galdius, which had switched back to Osiris placed against her throat, ready to decapitate her at any moment. "Tell me why you were here?" asked Naruto darkly, pulling the scythe back slightly to emphasize that he was serious. "Please. I didn't mean to intrude," she said as her voice trembled in fear that she may lose her life. But now that she was looking at the scythe, She soon realized who was behind her. The legendary Necrosis. The merciless hunter that sold himself to the darkness within him. You come here, and see me. You're most likely a spy. You must be killed, spoke Naruto as he slowly began to pull the scythe back. Wait. I will never speak of this. I promise. Just don't kill me, she begged. Looking to the top of her head, as something moved there that gained his attention, Naruto soon realized who was before him. It was Velvet Scarlatina. The one who he stood up for when Cardin and his chums were bullying her. Removing the scythe from her neck, he sat down on one of the stands and looked to her as she slowly turned around to look at Naruto, who she now found out to be Necrosis. You were this close to being killed. You should have said who you were, said Naruto looking to her as she paled. Well, when you have a scythe against your throat, you don't think clearly, retorted Velvet, now actually looking to Naruto. The moonlight splashing against his skin as the hair on his head became more illuminated from the moon. To her, Naruto looked extremely gorgeous. Everything about his body language to the way he conducted himself was absolutely stunning. But then again, she fell for him when he stood up for her like that. Good point. But why are you here? Asked Naruto. I just wanted to thank you for standing up for me like you did. But I didn't really have much of a chance and I was very much shy when it came to telling you, she responded as she took a seat on the opposite side. So, you now know of the kind of power I hold, said Naruto. Sort of. But what the heck was that? Asked Velvet. Smirking at what she asked, Naruto unwrapped his arm, bringing more light to the room as the neon blue glow shot out in every direction while Velvet stood there amazed at his right arm. Bringing a hand out, she locked eyes with Naruto. May I? She asked. Go on, said Naruto holding the arm out. Tracing it, she found it to feel exactly like scales. The blue glow gave a nice contrast to the red scales as the blue glow deepened. But really intrigued her the most was that in the blue light what looked to be a stream similar to water flowed from the elbow to the fingertips. This happened because of my past, stated Naruto. Tell me about your past, she asked. Going over everything as to how he became what he is now, Velvet found that he was extremely lonely and how he was racked with a constant burden and how he rose above it and became a ruthless hunter and mercenary. He even told her about his insanity and how he was keeping it in check through the swallowing of some pills. By the end of his essay, she pulled him into a hug while Naruto was extremely shocked by her advancement. I am not going to be like them. I will always see you as Naruto, the student of Beacon Academy. And I swear to take your secret to the grave, said Velvet with Naruto smiling to her as he broke the hug. Damn Velvet. Was that indirectly a confession? Asked Naruto with Velvet going beet red. Naruto just chuckled as he tied up his arm and placed a hand on her shoulder. Relax. We can be together, said Naruto, but won't Blake be upset with you double dating us? It feels to me like a relationship affair, said Velvet with Naruto giving off a full-hearted laugh. Relax with that. Blake already made it clear that any woman can be with me as long as she knows who I've been with as well, if she accepts the relationship. Yank and Weiss already are into me and Blake has accepted this, said Naruto as Velvet squealed in delight. So does that mean? She trailed as Naruto grabbed her cheeks and kissed her. The kiss was quick and innocent and Velvet found herself melting from the peck on the lips. Opening her eyes, she looked him deep in the eyes while Naruto was nodding. That is right. This will work. We can be boyfriend and girlfriend. We can be together, said Naruto with Velvet smiling at this knowledge. Well, can I see you here again? Tomorrow night? She asked with Naruto arching an eyebrow with her going red again. And not like that, she said swinging her arms in front of her. Sure, I can meet you here again tomorrow night, said Naruto with Velvet sighing in relief. Both got up and they made their way back to their dorm rooms. But not before giving Velvet a playful tap on her ass, gain a squeak of surprise from Naruto before leaving the arena. See you around, my bunny, said Naruto with Velvet going red at the nickname. Chapter 9. The Devils helps out. With Naruto now beginning to realize just how far his secret is going, he stormed into the dorm room while grabbing Team J and PR. Luckily for him, Kasumi wasn't in the room, so that was a sigh of relief there. If she had been in there and saw her friends pulled out like that, she'd get suspicious and eavesdrop on the conversation. One thing would lead to another and he would be compromised. He knew he was wicked strong. and that he could snap her neck much like breaking a toothpick. But there would be repercussions involved. See, the Uzumaki Namikaze name was a well-renowned name despite their exploits only being spoken about for a few days or weeks then dying out. They even held influence in the government and military. So if he were to, I don't know, say, break the arm of her should she have found out, then it would only take a few minutes before an entire army was on his doorstep and have him killed. Or he could just outright kill the body and be done with it, right? Wrong. Naruto remembered the day very clearly where sensors were placed into her body to see how she was doing. It happened when some of the radiation of Naruto's power affected her slightly. She wasn't a Grim. Not by a long shot, but she had to be monitored by it as some of the power was now inside her. She couldn't sense Naruto or whatever at all, which was a bonus on his end. Should Naruto kill her, those sensors would go off and alert every member of the house. And from there it was only a matter of time before he would again face an army. Naruto had taken on hordes of Grim before, but he never came out of them without scars. His last Grim hunt, he faced a horde of well over 40 dozen or c. He came out of that with fatigueness and he was slightly bleeding out. His healing factor was above human, which was him being a freak of nature. But it would only kick in where he had some power in him still. So waiting for you to regain even a small drop of power before you go into your healing phase was a very long wait. So for now, he would just watch her. And ensure she doesn't find out about his true identity. "What's wrong?" asked John as he sat on the bed along with the others sitting down. "I failed to mention something. You should not use my real name being Naruto," said Naruto, crossing his arms over his chest. "Why?" asked Pira, arching an eyebrow. "My sister is most likely searching for me. Let me rephrase. She is looking for me. So calling my name while she is around is a big no-no. I've told her my name is Nero. And I plan to keep it that way. The more she is in the dark the better. I don't like the fact of her knowing who I really am," said Naruto with Weiss shooting up. No offense to you guys regarding your new teammate," she said with Team JNPR taking none. "But couldn't you just kill her and be done with it?" Naruto simply chuckled a bit before becoming really serious. "It may be true that I am incredibly strong, but I'm not strong enough to take on a whole fucking army. The Uzumaki Namikaze name holds strong influence in the government and the army. So should anything happen to their little golden child, you can bet your ass that the entire military, navy and air force will be on my ass. Sure, I've taken on hordes of Grim in the past, but I've never came out on top. I more scraped through," said Naruto, throwing off his trench coat and pulling up his shirt, showing a very big scar which looked to be 3 claw marks. Everyone gasped at what they were seeing as Naruto shook his head at the mark he had. Pulling the tank top down, he threw his trench coat back on. Fixing it up, he went on to explain. "That was the latest marking I got when I went into a fight with a horde of Grim. 40 dozen were in the horde. I won the fight. But I was spent, so waiting for my aura to recharge while trying not to bleed out was something I don't want to go through again," said Naruto. "So, your cover name is Nero," said Rwby with Naruto nodding his head. "And we can only use your real name when your sister isn't around," said Nora with Naruto nodding his head again. "We can do that. You can count on us to keep your secret hidden," said Weiss with everyone agreeing with her. "Thank you guys so much. This really means a lot to me," said Naruto with them leaving the dorm room. With the issue cleared up, they got down to business. Everyone turned to Blake as she was slowly moving to the door, but she was stopped by Weiss. "You've been extremely distant as of late, so let me ask you, what is wrong?" she asked, now balancing on a chair while looking down on Blake. Naruto rubbed his eyes just to be sure he wasn't falling asleep. How the hell did she move that fast? "It's nothing. I'm just gonna get some air," she replied, making her way out the dorm with Weiss fixing the chair to be back at the table. With the door closing, they all looked to each other. "Okay, now I'm very much worried," said Naruto with the others agreeing with him. "She has burned herself out the more she pushes herself like this. We have to get her to at least have some sleep," said Rwby with Naruto nodding while donning a thinking pose. "I have to agree with Blake," he said, breaking from his pose. "Blake and I have fought together for some time when we were in the White Fang. For her to continuing be boggled by the idea of a human working with them is something they would never do. But she has to put this on hold," said Naruto, sounding desperate with Yang smirking at his tone. You sound like you're concerned, she said with Naruto shooting her a look. That's because I am. I've never seen her like this and it worries me so, he said as pulled out the tube in his pocket, popped the cap and swallowed down a pill. Then we get her mind off it, said Weiss. Agreed. We get to the bottom of why the White Fang are doing this, said Yank. Then it's settled. We split up and get everything sorted out, said Rwby as a voice came from the door. Turning to see who it was, they found Sun hanging upside down from a tree branch. All of them shot back a few feet and asked him how he got there. I do it all the time, he replied in his cheery voice. All the time? Growled Weiss while shooting him a death glare, wondering if he was looking when she was changing. So, are we gonna sort out this mess or not? Asked Sun. I am not sure about this actually. We need to do this as a team, said Rwby with Sun tilting his head. But I've brought Neptune here to help, said Sun with them shooting to the window. Right there on the ledge stood the blue-haired man as he turned his head to them. Sup? He chirped. How the bloody hell did you get up here? Asked Naruto wondering. I have my ways. But seriously, can I come in? I don't like heights, said Neptune only for Naruto to sigh as he held a hand out for him to grab. I think this may actually work with their help. It would widen our net, said Naruto with Neptune thanking him. But we can't do it without Blake, said Rwby. I'll go get her, said Naruto making his way to the door. Walking along the halls he found many of the students looking his way while giving him a wide berth. Naruto knew why they were parting like the Red Sea. Seeing his fight against Carden, they knew he was not to be trifled with. His power was unparalleled. And extremely powerful. Some respected him. Others feared him. It was like his old life never left him. Finding Blake at the fountain, he sat down on her right while she turned to look at him. I know it's eating you away, but I have some news that will pick you up, said Naruto with Blake arching an eyebrow. I seriously doubt that, said Blake. Relax. We've decided to help you get to the bottom of this and see what is going on as to why the White Fang is working with a human, said Naruto with Blake's ears twitching inside her bow. Really? She asked with Naruto nodding his head. Then let's go, she said as Naruto was pulled by her. That literally took no effort, said Naruto as he was dragged to the dorm room. Getting there they went over the plan. Weiss and Rwby would go in and infiltrate the CCT tower and gather information regarding the Schnee Dust Company archives for dust shipments stolen. Yank and Neptune would go to one of Yang's old friends on information. While Naruto, Sun and Blake would go in and find a bunch of faunus gathering for new recruits for the White Fang. With everything ready to go, they set out to do their part. Later in the day. Night. Walking along the alley, Blake stopped and looked behind her as she peered past the corner. She found two guards standing at the door. Pulling back from the corner, she handed Sun and Naruto a mask. These will help us blend in. Here we can find out just what they are up to, she said as the two took their mask. No offense, but Naruto is human. Won't he be found out very easily? Asked Sun while Naruto smiled along with Blake. I was waiting for that. Naruto, stated Blake with Naruto nodding his head as he closed his eyes. Variant, whispered Naruto. In a small flash of his aura, Naruto's body morphed and shifted. He grew an inch taller, his nails grew slightly longer as his hair turned a light gray. His skin became slightly more pale and on his head emerged two small horns with it ending with his canines now slightly jutting out his top lip. Tada, stated Naruto while Sun stood there dumbfounded. Dude, you're like a jack in the box. Full of surprises, said Sun as Naruto put his mask on. Let's get inside, said Blake walking off. Getting inside they found a commander busy prepping the new forces joining them. The team kept a watchful eye on anything suspicious and anything that looked out of the ordinary, but nothing seemed different until Torchwick stood out from behind the banner. As he gave his speech, Naruto began to smell something that smelled like petrol. Thanks to his senses now being heightened thanks to his variant being used on himself, his senses were bolstered to be higher than that of a faunus. Tapping the two on their shoulders they turned to him. I smell petrol, he said with them beginning to look around for the cause. But that was when Torchwick ripped the banner down and showed the item behind it. It was a mech. Armed to the teeth and pretty powerful from the looks of it. This is the power I give to you, With this in your grasp, you will be powerful beyond compare. You will be able to take back what belongs to you," said Torchwick with all the faunus shouting cheering of praise. With all the new recruits going to the stage, Torchick's eyes landed on 3 individuals who were standing still. Sun's eyes landed on Torchwick, then tapped Naruto and Blake's shoulder. "He's onto us," said Sun with Naruto spotting a junction box. "How good's your aim?" whispered Naruto to Blake. "Who do you take me for?" she retorted as she slowly pulled out her weapon and fired at the junction box. With the lights being killed, they bolted out the window with Torchwick jumping into the mech and giving chase to the group. Throwing off their masks, Blake climbed onto her phone. "Guys, we got a problem," she said as they sprinted down the road. "What type of problem?" asked Yang from the other line. At that moment they passed the area Yang was in, with her turning around to see the giant mech following them. "Hang on," said Yang as her and Neptune jumped on the bike. Naruto brought out Gladius and morphed it back to Osiris and began to charge up some of his aura into the scythe. The scythe soon glowed a violent blue as small arcs of lightning arced off the blade. Jumping into the air, he began to spin the scythe using the one handle on the side. "Shredder!" he shouted as a wheel of energy leapt from the scythe and sped to the mech. The mech just jumped out the way as it continued its pursuit. Clicking his tongue as they made it to the freeway, they found everyone there. But they were cornered off when a wall of cars were thrown to block their way. Naruto along with everyone else got ready to engage in battle with the mech. "This is not looking good. I can't get into his mind," said Naruto, frustrated that his twist ability was cancelled out so easily. "Why?" asked Weiss. "I need clear line of sight to use twist. Should my view be obstructed, it is rendered useless," said Naruto as the mech charged at them. Shooting off the bridge, they dived down to the bottom with the mech hot on their heels, looking at the mech with a glare. Naruto thought of something. Placing his scythe on his back, he clasped his hands together and began to rub them together. "This should help," said Naruto, breathing onto his hands with a black mist emanating from his moving hands. Soon the entire battlefield was covered in the mist and the visual sensors of the mech were rendered useless. Tracking lasers soon came to life as the mech began to search for them. "What was that?" asked Rwby, watching the mech. "Nightmare Shroud. Seeing that twist and this ability share something in common, being messing with the minds of people, it can only be used now to cancel his visual sensors. Let's get him," said Naruto as they charged forth. But Neptune stepped wrong in their charge and gave away their position. The mech charged forth and slammed into Yang, who was sent through a concrete pillar. Blake and Rwby charged forth to provide a distraction until Yang got back on her feet, but the sheer firepower this thing was packing was incredible. Seeing Yang slowly get to her feet, the mech slammed her against another pillar and watched as she dropped to the ground. With her slowly falling, he sent another strike to her. Naruto, slightly getting annoyed, grabbed the wrapping on his arm and undid the knot. Pulling the cloth off, he flexed his arm and slammed it on the ground as a small tremor shook the ground before him. Turning around, the team couldn't believe that Naruto was going to use his demonic right arm for this fight. Must be because of seeing your friend smashed through a pillar that holds up bridges does that to you. Charging full force at the mech, Naruto swung his claw, but he was a fair distance away from the thing. Weiss was about to shake it off that he was just trying to scare the mech, but what came next shocked her and the others to the core. A huge blue ethereal arm that easily matched the shape of Naruto's arm erupted forth. The only difference was that the arm that was generated was a full blue color. Yang saw this as an opening and used this to strike. But that was when the mech grabbed Yang and slammed her against yet another pillar and then plummeled her into the ground. Naruto's eyes were fixed on Yang. During the time he spent with his new team, he began to like them. Even going so far as to start falling for them like he did with Blake when he was 14. And seeing his borderline love interest on the floor and then slowly getting up just sent his rage into a new level. All he saw was red. Dropping to the floor, he growled rather low and began to go into his ultimate level of power. The beast mode. A sudden burst and wave of power shot through the area was enough to alert everyone as arcs of purple lightning sprayed off in every direction around Naruto. Looking to find where this sudden increase in power came from, they turned to see Naruto just as his eyes turned pure black with his hair also turning black. Shooting up to his feet, he let off an unholy roar as he fully transformed into his beast mode. Weiss, Neptune, Yang, who was slightly conscious, and Rwby were horrified at what they were seeing. Naruto had told them about this terrible and awesome transformation he could use, but they never imagined this extent of such power. The scythe dropped from his back and landed on the ground with a thud as Naruto entered his beast mode. Slowly walking to the mech with him growling as he moved, he charged along with the mech doing the same. Both slammed into each other in the center. Naruto's hands locked with the mech's weapons. Growling at the mech, he began to push back with all his might. Inside, Torchwick couldn't believe that the person who was the monster he fought at the docks was this guy. He wondered just how the beast got into Vale, and now that he knew it was this man, he smiled. The fog slightly lifting on the mystery about this monster. Now it was just a matter of finding out who he really was. Pushing the mech back, Naruto began to gather up his power into his hands as lightning arced off his hands. A wave of power launched off his right hand with another from his left. Blake saw this coming and told everyone to drop to the ground. Thrusting his hands out, 2 beams of purple power shot from Naruto's hands and sped toward the mech. A nice big hole being made from the impact of such a strike. Ejecting out the mech just before it exploded, Torchwick slowly got up with a woman holding an umbrella made her way to them. "Such a nice warm-up you gave me, but sorry, I must be going now. Cheers," he said with the lady giving a mocking bow. Naruto surged forward, the intent to kill still burning through every fiber of his body, but when he made contact, the only thing that happened was a glass figure of them shattering. Howling at the sheer frustration, Naruto turned to his teammates. But he showed much less hostility than what he showed to Torchwick. Weiss along with Yank and Rwby made their way to the beast as Naruto stood there, slowly breathing in and letting out a low soft growl as he exhaled. Lowering his arms to be by his sides while he still remained slightly hunched over, he did his best to not give off a hostile impression. The lightning shooting off his body, slowed down to only just have a few sparks go off here and there. Once they were close enough to him, Weiss placed a hand on his gray cheek while Naruto leaned his head into the hand. Slowly turning back to normal with his regular standing up straight posture returning. His skin turning to be its normal color of a slight pale white. Once he was back to normal, he slightly stumbled back but was caught by Blake, who shot towards him. "Sorry you had to see that," said Naruto, turning to Blake and thanking her. "No, it's fine. It just goes to show just how far you're willing to go to protect us," said Yank along with the others agreeing with her. "But what was that ability? You know, the one where you shot 2 purple beams out your hands," stated Weiss. "Yes, that was a power I call Beast Strike. I can only use it along with a few others when I go into beast mode. By channeling my power into my hands, I can deliver a powerful distance attack on an enemy. But the more aura I put into it, the stronger the recoil is. Meaning the wider the area of damage becomes," said Naruto with them understanding. "Come on. Some people may have seen that attack. We need to get out of here," said Neptune with them agreeing. With Cinder. Cinder along with her team were sitting in a dorm room as she was seen with a cell phone in her hand and pressed to her ear. She had received a call from Torchwick regarding the monster that he faced for a second time. And that he even saw a wrapped up arm on the one who transformed. Not to mention, showing said covered arm to be nothing he had ever seen before. "I see. Continue with your current assignment and do what needs to be done. Check in when you're done," she said, hanging up the phone. "Torchwick?" asked Mercury with Cinder nodding her head. Turns out the beast he fought at the docks that one night attacked again. But this beast was in the form of a man before he transformed. Wrapped up arm with the arm being nothing seen before," said Cinder. "If I'm not mistaken, the student who we bumped into in the hall had a covered arm," said Emerald with Mercury agreeing with her. "Yes. That does pose a reason to be concerned. We'll watch him for now. Hopefully, we can get him to join us," said Cinder. "How come?" asked Mercury. "The way he held himself. He desires to fight. It's like he's drawn to chaos. A hunger for blood. There's no mistaking it. He's a killer," replied Cinder, giving a small chuckle at how this may play out. Chapter 10. The Devil's Prom Night. Waking up to a wonderful morning, Naruto grabbed his bathroom stuff and walked over to the bathroom. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, Naruto sighed as he laid out his trench coat and grabbed the tube out the inside pocket. Popping the cap, he fished out a pill and swallowed it down. Leaning his head against the mirror as he watched the water run out, He began to wonder what would have happened if he didn't have this power. It was times like these that he wondered on this topic. So he could only do the one thing he could do in this situation. Think on it. He would always picture it. Him playing with his parents. Living a life filled with luxury, wealth and power. Having everything handed to you on a silver platter. Very much sounded like the perfect life. Too bad that dream was very much gonna stay as it was. Just a dream. Look at him now. A full-fledged badass that was feared by all, respected by some, and loved by few. Keeping his mind sane through swallowing down pills that only worked for no longer than 10 whole fucking hours. Squeezing the tube at how he sometimes hated his life. Naruto pondered at his little screw-up of a life, the pain he endured. The suffering he persevered in. The torment his mind was sent through. He had been to hell and back, but the thing about making that trip and back, you change along the way. But with every cloud, there is always a silver lining. Naruto was at times happy he was like this. No pedestal to be put on. He hated being on a pedestal. He absolutely hated it. 'Cause once you're up there, it is only a matter of time before you have that ripped out from under you. Nothing Naruto needed to worry about. Absolutely nothing. "You okay?" came a voice from the door. Turning to see who it was, he saw Mercury there. He too had just woken up and was ready for a shower. Quickly pocketing the tube into his trench coat, he smiled to him, as if trying to show that nothing ever happened. "Sure. Everything is fine," said Naruto, giving a thumbs up to Mercury. Moving to the one shower stall and running the water, Naruto went to clean himself as he pulled off the wrapping. Despite having the demonic arm being wrapped up like it was still part of him and it had to be cleaned every time he had a shower. He was still one for hygiene. Seeing a faint blue glow from the stall Naruto was in, Mercury silently made his way to the stall and peeked inside. Cinder's suspicions were very much confirmed when Mercury saw Naruto's arm. It was now official. The one that attacked Torchwick, and the one who transformed into that monster, was this very man. Smiling at this, he made his way to a different stall and cleaned himself for the day. Once Naruto felt he cleaned himself properly, he switched off the water, dried himself off and wrapped up his arm again. Completely oblivious to the fact that he was now compromised by Mercury. Getting dressed, he made his way out the bathroom and bumped into Pyrrha, who looked to be down as well. Arcing an eyebrow, he took her arm and pulled her to the roof of the dorms. "Okay, Pyrrha. Tell me what is wrong?" asked Naruto, crossing his arms. "It's nothing," replied Pyrrha, giving a crooked smile to Naruto. Naruto only dropped his head as a sigh escaped his lips. "I've seen Blake in moods like this and she says the same thing as to what you just said. I'll ask you again. What is wrong?" asked Naruto again, but in a more stern voice. "It's just that the prom is tonight, and I feel that I will probably sit it out," said Pyrrha, with Naruto placing his hands on her shoulders. "Let me guess. You feel that you don't have a date is because people think you're too good for them. You'll just end up overpowering them. That is also why you never had a relationship before," said Naruto, with Pyrrha nodding her head. "When I was young, I was placed on a pedestal. Everyone liked and enjoyed what I could do. But soon everyone left me. Even those who put me on that pedestal. You have no idea what it was like to be left in the dark," said Pyrrha, but she soon gasped at what she just said. "You have a point. I don't know what it is like to be placed on a pedestal. But I know what it is like to be in the dark. I've lived in the dark for a long time. But the thing about that, you can't let it influence you. Like it did with me," said Naruto, pulling out the tube to prove his point. Grabbing a hold of his cheeks, she brought her forehead to his and gazed deeply into his eyes. As if she was searching for something, she closed her eyes and began to concentrate. Naruto did the same and closed his eyes along with her. But when he felt something touch his mind, he snapped his eyes open. "No, don't," said Naruto in a shout of plea to stop her, but it was too late. Pyrrha was already in his mind. But what Pyrrha saw nearly drove her to have nightmares. She saw two things. One was an image of a little boy who looked like Naruto, though no older than 6 years old, being scolded. His hands buried deep within his hands as he wept and wept. The people who were scolding him were shadows of the people who he lived with when he was a child. "You'll never be strong enough. You will never accomplish anything. You'll never be powerful enough to live. You should just die. 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 Just fucking die. You useless waste of oxygen. The constant shouting and belittling drove the child to sob even more. But as she watched the scene, she saw a flicker of a golden flame dancing in the distance. Moving over to it, she noticed that when she took one step, the landscape shifted to no longer be cloudy with jagged mountain ranges and a destroyed house, but now was a desert wasteland as sandstorms kicked up and began to pull at her skin. Moving closer to the flame, she saw it was that of an older Naruto, but slightly younger than what he was now. His right hand clasped as if holding his chest in pain. His eyes strained from the pain he was feeling. His hair moving violently as he moved endlessly in the storm. Looking closely, Pyrrha saw that the right hand was that of his demonic right hand as a slight blue glow shone through the fire. Where am I? Why am I lost? Why can't I find anyone? Why am I alone? He kept saying as he endlessly wandered the desert, the sands biting his flesh as a grain clipped his cheek. From the small scratch emerged a small gush of ember fire. Pyrrha had seen enough. Pulling her hands away from Naruto's head, she stumbled back as she began to shake from what she had just seen. Catching her before she fell to the floor, Naruto held her as his face became racked with concern. After all, he didn't want to show anyone what his mind was going through. And now that someone had seen it, he was very much concerned for her. He was worried that it may have scarred her for life. Pyrrha? Are you okay? Asked Naruto, snapping his fingers over her face. Snapping her eyes open, she broke from his grasp and threw up by the pipes. She had never seen such horrors in her life. It was like she delved into hell itself. She helped John awaken his aura, and sure, she saw what he went through, but this was on a whole new level. The amount of torment this single individual had endured was something like no other. No offense. But how are you still even alive? Just by seeing that, I'd have committed suicide, stated Pyrrha, looking to Naruto. I guess I haven't thought about that actually. I once came close to committing suicide, but stopped myself from doing so. Guess there are things I have to do before leaving this world, said Naruto. But still, all that pain and suffering, all that torment, that was what you went through when you were young? She asked with Naruto nodding. It has stayed with me for all these years. The insanity in my head was never this bad when Mito, my grandmother, was still around. It got worse when she passed on. Look, I understand if you wish to alienate me. I understand it all. But please, don't. I beg you, said Naruto, dropping his head to the ground. Pyrrha was so shocked from what she was seeing. Naruto, the very person who was the legendary mercenary and hunter, the one who was a devil in the eyes of others, was actually a fragile man who wanted nothing more than to be accepted by others. He wanted to be loved, to be cared for. The one thing that drove him was nothing more than pure acceptance. Acceptance. That word rung in her mind as pure rain. Sure, Naruto was loved by his girlfriend, lover, Blake, and was working his way into the hearts of others. He had to accept. But what? What did he have to accept? Placing a gentle touch on his shoulder, she gazed into the ice-blue eyes of Naruto and smiled a true smile. Naruto slowly got up but was shocked when Pyrrha pulled him into a hug. Shocked by such a revelation, Naruto accepted this as her showing that she has accepted him for who he was. Thanks, Pyrrha, I really needed that, said Naruto with her breaking from the hug. Don't sweat it, Naruto, and just know, you can talk to me about anything, she said with a smile. With the two of them leaving the roof, Naruto made his way to get some food and found his team there, minus Blake. Setting his food down on the opposite side, he looked over to them. Yank was the first to give out a sigh. Arching his eyebrow, Naruto asked her. What's wrong? He asked. I can't believe the guy the first went to regarding the White Fang said he doesn't know. But the guy who might was in a new club that went by the name of Devil's Night, she replied. So what's the problem? Asked Naruto, taking a bite of his food. He wasn't in according to the bouncer. The bouncer chased us away and now we have nothing, said Yank, slightly annoyed of not getting information to help. Then let's go to the club today, said Naruto, taking another bite. Why? Asked Weiss. He may be in today, was all Naruto said. Later during the day, getting Blake to come along, who was found at a restaurant, they made their way to the club, Devil's Night. It was only 3 in the afternoon and there was already a line waiting to get in. Weiss sighed at the line already generated along with Rwby. We're never getting in. said Rwby with Naruto giving a slight chuckle as he made his way to the front. He walked past the fenced-off line on the right and walked straight over to the door. The girls stood there as the bouncer placed a hand on his shoulder. Just giving a look over to the bouncer, they were startled when the bouncer shivered, followed by a smile to Naruto. "Come on, let me in," snapped the man at the front. "The boss of this club is expecting me," he added. "I've brought some friends. They're permanent VIPs," said Naruto pointing to his team. "Of course, boss," said the bouncer as he called Yank, Rwby, Weiss and Blake to follow Naruto. Opening the door, the song Julian Jordan Lost Words echoed from the speakers. They were utterly impressed by the sheer design of the place. Cages with beautiful women dancing inside dotted the ceiling, as some were seen dancing on poles on the floor. Many people were enjoying the music as they danced away. A massive bar rested on the right as strobe lights flickered on and off, splashing the place in multiple colors. A DJ rested at the top as he spun the beats together. "Welcome to Devil's Night," said Naruto giving a bow. "You own a club?" was all Rwby could say with Naruto smirking. "Yes. I decided to open one when I got enough cash. This club is very popular and we also cater for the people who don't have much. The guys outside of course have to be on the list given. But this place is also part of a vigilante group," said Naruto making his way to the bar with the girls following. "What type of vigilante group?" asked Weiss. "Don't care, as long as they help the cops." "And no, I don't do deals with Torchwick or the White Fang," responded Naruto. "This is so cool," said Rwby marveling at the club interior. Getting a glass of whiskey and a cigarette, Naruto lit it with the lighter from the barman and drank some of the whiskey. "So, you wanted answers regarding the whole White Fang thing," said Naruto looking over to the barman. "Yeah. What can you tell us?" asked Blake determined to get answers. "Nothing much has surfaced regarding them. They've been really silent lately and nothing has come through at all. But rumor has it that they are in an abandoned area of a city that went dark because of Grimm," replied the barman as Naruto blew out several smoke rings. "That's it," snapped Blake. Hey, the barman's just doing his job, okay? Relax," said Yank. "Whatever. I'm outta here," said Blake storming out the club. "Sheesh. We need to get her to slow down," said Weiss as Naruto put his cigarette out. "That I agree with," said Naruto thanking the barman for the drink and walking out with his friends and comrades. Finally getting to the school, they found the ballroom already set up and ready for the party. Yank had finally had enough. She made her way to get Blake and talk with her, while the others got ready for the prom happening tonight. Naruto had already gotten his tux ready and was now going to the bathrooms to change into it. It was a magnificent black tuxedo with a red tie. Once there he found Mercury again. He was also getting into his tuxedo. Putting his trench coat on a hanger, he zipped open the bag his tux was in and got change. As he got dressed, he placed a hand on his head as he felt the voices come back again. And again, they started off as whispers and then began to build. Making his way to the trench coat as he clutched his head with his left hand, he popped the cap and pulled out a pill using his one hand available. Closing the cap, he pocketed the tube in the trench coat and swallowed down the pill. Sighing in relief as he heard the voices fade out, he looked over to Mercury. Giving him a smile, he went back to changing. "Medical purposes," said Naruto putting his tie on. "Okay," was all Mercury said as he too got dressed. Feeling nature call, Naruto went to one of the stalls in the other room but not before looking to Mercury. "Don't jack my shit," he said. "Wouldn't dare to," was all Mercury said. But when the door closed, Mercury made his way to the trench coat and took one of the pills inside the tube. He'd have to show this to Cinder and see what these really were. If this was something to raise a concern for Beacon, then it was a very big advantage on their side. Naruto came out and put his blazer on and walked out the bathroom along with his stuff, oblivious to the fact that one of his mental suppressants, calling the pills that were stolen from the tube. Walking past the one lecture room, Naruto heard voices coming from inside. Making his way to the door, he found Blake and Yank there. Yank was busy telling Blke to slam the brakes on what she was doing but never lose sight on what to do. Hearing Blake agree to this, Naruto smiled as he closed his eyes. Hearing those words from his girlfriend filled him with happiness. Hopefully she would be able to be herself again. Making his way to the ballroom, he saw everyone enjoying themselves. Looking at the time, Naruto made his way to the balcony as he looked at the tower in the distance. Everything seemed to be perfect, a wonderful night and a way to have some fun. And no, he wasn't go and look for trouble. He was going to enjoy himself in this moment. He couldn't remember the last time he just relaxed like this, but then again, he never had the chance. The shunning from his past life, followed by the constant threat of being killed in his sleep when he left. So this was a nice change of pace. Even for just one night, he'd enjoy it as much as possible. Making his way outside, he found Rwby along with Weiss in the ballroom in some very fancy outfits that suited them well. Yank was welcoming guests inside and whatnot, but when he finally got outside, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a cigarette. Lighting it, he blew out some smoke as he looked to the heavens. Breathing in more smoke, he blew out 7 smoke rings before he heard a voice from behind. "Aren't you a little young to smoke?" said the voice. Turning around, Naruto's jaw hit the floor. Play Re-Zero Ost 21 Wish of the Stars. There stood Blake in a very beautiful purple dress with a black choker around her neck. The way the dress sat emphasized everything about her. She looked to be a goddess beyond compare. Blake blushed as she looked at the ground while rolling her ankle. "Stop it. You're embarrassing me," she said, breaking Naruto from his thoughts. "Wow," was all Naruto said before stepping on his cigarette and made his way to her. "You look absolutely breathtaking," added Naruto, laying a gentle hand on her shoulders. "So do you," said Blake as she grabbed her man by his waist. "May I escort thee, princess, to the ball?" asked Naruto, giving her a bow. Blake just giggled as she held out her hand for him to take. "Be a pleasure, thy prince," she replied. Holding out an arm for her, she wrapped her arm in the loop made and they walked into the ballroom. "But the first dance has been taken by Yank," said Blake, with Naruto giving a small chuckle. "Of course, my kitty," said Naruto, opening the door for her. End song. Walking in, they were welcomed by Yank, and Naruto stood and watched as his girlfriend and love interest make their way to the dance floor. But as he watched on, he spotted Pyrrha in a magnificent red dress that came to her heels walking up the stairs to the balcony. Curiosity getting the better of him, he made his way to her. He found her exactly at the balcony, looking over to the same tower he looked at when he was here. Giving a small cough, he grabbed her attention. "Naruto, I didn't know you were here," said Pyrrha. "Having trouble?" asked Naruto, with Pyrrha dropping her head. "Yeah, it's just, no one wanted to go with me," said Pyrrha, with Naruto understanding what she meant. But then he had a brainwave. Walking over to her, he took her hand into his and gazed into her eyes as she gazed into his. "If you'd like, I can be your date," said Naruto, with Pyrrha being shocked at what he said. "But what about Blake? I know you two are an item and it would look like I'm a person who's in a relationship affair with you," said Pyrrha, afraid of stepping over boundaries. Naruto only gave a small chuckle to her as she arched an eyebrow. "Relax. Blake has already stated she is willing to share me as long as it is with someone she already knows. So this can work between us," said Naruto. "You really wouldn't mind?" she asked. "If I did, I wouldn't be up here with you," retorted Naruto. He had a point. Plus, in a sense, she had begun crushing on Naruto. She still wasn't aware of the terrible destructive power he held within him, but she would accept him for who he was even if it did come down to that. She even accepted his mental condition and never looked him in a different light. Thanking him for being her date for the prom, they made their way to the ballroom and danced the night away. It was a night of perfection. Looking up to the balcony, he spotted Cinder in a wonderful black dress with gloves that came up to her elbows. She looked sublime in it. But Naruto still didn't know her from a bar of soup. So for now, she was just an acquaintance. But for some reason, Rwby was nowhere to be found. Must be that she was getting some fresh air. That was when Weiss along with Yank and Blake made their way to him and began to talk with Pyrrha, and true to Naruto's word, Blake said that she was more than willing on sharing Naruto with Pyrrha. Thanking her for that, they enjoyed the night away. Tomorrow they'd be going on actually missions, shadowing a real hunter or huntress. End scene. Chapter 11. The Devil's Trip Gone Wrong. Waking up the next morning, Naruto opened his eyes as he soon felt a bit of weight on his chest. Looking down with his eyes, he found a mop of black hair together with a mop of yellow hair. Blake and Yang were snuggled very contentedly on his chest as both of them silently slept while Naruto just chuckled. But that was when Naruto looked over to find Rwby nowhere to be found while Weiss was still asleep. Slowly and very carefully getting out of their hold of him, and being very silent to not wake them up in the process, Naruto got dressed in his usual get-up. Naruto sighed once more as the voices began to act up again. But they stopped entirely once again when he swallowed down yet another pill. Days dragged on like this as he felt that the 10 hours more felt like 10 minutes. His mind was just not coping with the constant screams and laughter that flooded his mind every time he didn't take one of the tablets. Making his way out the dorm, Naruto soon found Rwby, who was walking back from Ospin's office. Signaling her by calling out her name, he walked with her as he gazed to her. She seemed to be upset about something. "What's wrong?" asked Naruto as Rwby shrugged her shoulders. "Oh. Just that Ospin said that I must just now leave it to them. That they will take care of what will happen," said Rwby with Naruto nodding his head at what was going on. But just as he was about to talk to her regarding the issue, Glinda was seen walking to him. When she made it to him, she told him that Ospin would like to talk with him. Excusing himself from Rwby, he made his way to see what Ospin asked of him. Rwby in the meantime made her way back to the dorm room. When she got there, Yank gave her sister a nice big hug. "I'm so glad you're okay," she said. "All I did was go to see Ospin about last night," was all Rwby could say. "Oh, this came in for us. Dunno what it is," said Yank grabbing a cylinder from the table. "Who is it from?" asked Rwby. "Dad," was all Yank used as her reply. Opening the cylinder, two things happened. The first thing that happened was a dog came from the cylinder with Weiss wondering how the hell that thing was able to fit in there. And the second thing was that Blake was on the top bunk where Rwby slept. To be honest, it was pretty simple. Dogs and cats don't go well together most of the time. The dog just sped to the bottom bunk and looked up at Blake, acting all friendly and all, but Blake was having none of it. But that was when the intercom went off stating that all students should go to the arena for a briefing on what is going to happen. As they went down, Rwby took the dog and shoved him into a bag. When she made it to the arena, she stood along with her team and began to scan around. Naruto was nowhere to be found. Where was he? Was the thought in her mind. Ospin went over how the students were now given the opportunity to shadow a real hunter or huntress and that they would be taken outside the walls of the city. When the speech was finished, Rwby along with the others went over to a board that showed the various areas where there were opportunities for grabs. When they selected one, they found that they were denied it. So they tried with just Rwby and still it showed up as them denied. Ospin came in and pulled a few strings giving them access to that point of opportunity. Walking out, they were joined by Team JNPRK and found they were doing the same one and going to the same area. Walking off to the landing pad, they found the hyperactive professor there and he told them that he'd be taking them. They all donned faces of dread and gloom. But that changed when he burst into laughter. "I'm not taking you at all. He is," said the professor pointing up to the sky as a jet flew down and landed on the pad. The door swung open as none other than Naruto stepped out from the plane. Every single one of them were shocked to find that it was Naruto. What was he doing? "Hey guys and girls," he said giving a mock salute. "What the hell are you doing? Are you really taking us Naniro?" asked Yank, catching herself before she compromised Naruto's cover. "Sure I am. After all, I am a hunter after all," he said. "That makes sense. So this was the talk you had when you went to Ospin," said Rwby with Naruto nodding his head. Naruto. 3 hours earlier. Stepping into the elevator, Naruto began tapping his foot. He seriously hated being called in every single time. And honestly, he would be in his rights to be so. Sure, he was one of the most dangerous mercenaries and grim hunters around, but he doesn't need to be always called in just because he sneezed or take a shit without flushing afterwards. He does flush, mind you. Once he reached the top floor, the doors opened up and Naruto stormed into the office with a rather irritated look on his features as he slammed his hands on Ospin's desk. "What do you want?" he snarled. "I've asked you here because I feel that you going on this trip will be a waste of time," said Ospin. "Oh, is it because of the fact that I may kill a student? That I'm too much of a hazard? 'Cause if that's the case, then why allow me into the school?" growled Naruto. "You didn't let me finish. Due to you having a large amount of experience in the field with hunting grim and butchering them." I would like for you to teach Blake, Rwby, Yank, Weiss and Team JNPRK, said Ospin. I see. So I'm temporarily not going to be part of Team RWBNY, just to give them a feel of what it is like in the field, stated Naruto as Ospin nodded his head. That's correct, said Ospin as Naruto nodded to him and left the office to get ready. Now, that's how I am now taking you guys on this assignment, said Naruto. But are you really that good? Asked Kasumi, not believing it at all. I am skilled in the field of hunting Grim. After all, I was thrown into the fray when I was quite young, he replied. Okay. Well, let's get going, said John with them climbing into the jet and took off. So what did you hunt as a child? Asked Pyrrha as she stood with Naruto. Nearly everything. Death Stalkers, Beowulfs, Nevermores. The whole lot, said Naruto as the jet came into view of their destination where they were going to be dropped off. The place they were taken to was a wasteland, to be blunt. Abandoned buildings littered the area as rubble dotted the area. The place looked to have seen better days as they got weapons ready when a Grim came into view. Rwby and the others got ready to engage when Naruto held out his hand to them. Not always should you engage in a fight. Sometimes it can be avoided, said Naruto, only to have more Grim come into the scene. Soon enough they looked over to the group and they charged into the fray. Sighing as he let the group have fun with the Grim coming into the fight, Naruto stood back and decided to let them see what they could do. But when his eyes landed on his sister, he became slightly furious when she pulled out her father's signature weapon along with her mother's, the Hiraishin and Netherworld chain respectively. Throwing the kunai at one Grim, she vanished from sight as she jammed the chained kunai into the skull. Deciding to question them one by one, he started with Kasumi. So, what is your reason to be a huntress? Asked Naruto as he jumped onto a scaffolding. The person who I once saw as a brother destroyed everything. I hated him. To become a huntress means I can kill him and help my parents, said Kasumi as she skewered another Grim. Hell bent on killing me. She is so blinded by our parents' foolishness and closed-mindedness, thought Naruto as he went to the others. Seeing Pyrrha fighting with some Grim, he leaned against a building as she soon caught him in the corner of her eye. So, Pyrrha, why do you become a huntress? Asked Naruto. I want to have a world where people are free from all Grim, where we cannot be in constant fear of what is out there, she said as Naruto nodded his head. Is that the only reason? Asked Naruto. I also want to save as many people as I can. I want them to be happy and to be safe knowing that they are in good hands, she said as she blocked a Grim claw. Just be careful as there are moments when you must save one and sacrifice the other, said Naruto as he moved on. Getting everyone's opinion on the matter, Naruto found that most of them had the same goal as to why they want to become hunters or huntresses. It was because either have lost something because of them, or some of them just want to do it for own reasons, like Kasumi who is out to kill him. Getting everyone settled into the one building, they set up camp with Rwby taking first watch. Naruto left the building and went about his own way as he said he needed to secure the perimeter. Blake, however, saw through this and followed him. Spotting him leaning against a wall, she watched on. Naruto was right now clutching his chest as he breathed in heavily. Sweat beaded down his head as he struggled to calm down. Slowly pulling out the tube, he popped the cap open and swallowed down a pill. Giving a pained sigh as he felt the pills work, he slumped along the building as he looked up to the slowly darkening sky. You can come out, Blake, said Naruto, not breaking eye contact with the sky. Still as sharp as ever, I see, she said as she walked over to him and sat down alongside him. What's wrong? It's just that sometimes I wonder if there will be anything left of me in the end. 1/4 of my DNA is now Grim. What will happen to me should I become a Grim? Asked Naruto, only to have Blake grab his cheeks and turn his face to hers. You will never become a Grim, because you are you, and you are ours. Know that always, she said as she brought her face to Naruto's and gave him a kiss on his lips. Grabbing her hips as his primal instincts slightly took control, Naruto pulled Blake rather hard against him. Breaking from the kiss as she gasped in surprise, she soon found herself pushed against the wall with her legs wrapped around his waist. It's been quite a long time since you and I did that, said Naruto while Blake ran her fingers across his chest. That is true. However, we can't do it here. Too many Grim and too many ears to hear us, said Blake as Naruto nodded his head as he restrained himself only to have Blake give him another kiss on his lips. Giving into the kiss as he parted his lips, allowing her tongue to dart about in his mouth. Blake allowed him to dominate her own mouth as they soon parted from the kiss. But I promise, when we have some quiet time, you and I are gonna pick up where we left off, where you walked away after becoming one with me, said Blake with Naruto chuckling as the two walked back to camp. As the teams decided to get some sleep, Naruto told Rwby to take first watch while he jumped into the rafters of the building and fell asleep. He had to admit one thing. Even though he didn't enjoy being in danger while trying to sleep, it tends to grow on you. He felt like he was home. Yet not at home. Finally getting to sleep, he began to dream. But the dream he had was one he never thought he'd have. In his dream, he dreamt that he and the women he loved were happily married. Their children running about while Naruto looked on in their house they owned. Faunus children played around with their human half-siblings. A wondrous sight. But the dream soon began to twist and turn as the ground shook with spouts of lava shooting through cracks that appeared from nowhere. Naruto's children stumbled around, trying to get their footing. But one of them fell into a hole that appeared. Transforming quickly into his beast mode, Naruto shot off as fast as he could to the falling child. Grabbing the child's arm just as he was about to be swallowed by the hole, Naruto soon felt the ground begin to give way. Throwing his child to the group, he fell into the abyss. There he was soon succumbed to the screams and shouts of hearing what sounded like hell as his nose was filled with the aroma of burning flesh. "You killed us," came a distorted demonic voice as a demonic variant of everyone came before him while Blake stood before him with her fringe covering her eyes, while black tears rolled down her cheeks. Shooting up as fast as he could, Naruto found everyone gathered around him with Pira holding a hand out as if to wake him. "What's wrong?" asked Naruto getting up. "It's Rwby, Nero. She fell into a hole," said Yank concerned for her sister. "Damn, let's go," said Naruto grabbing his weapon. With them going to the hole Rwby fell in. Spotting Sway by the hole, the Bog looked over to Naruto with him now growling while Naruto gained a very dark face as he stared down the dog. "What's going on?" asked Kasumi looking from the dog to her teacher. "Nah, Nero here hates dogs. Dunno why," said Blake knowing exactly why Sway was growling at Naruto. It was because of the grim blood in his veins that dogs growled or barked violently at him. It was a bad trait, Naruto knew. "Okay," said the team as Naruto grabbed some rope out the backpack and threw it down. "Okay, we go in, get Rwby and head back to Beacon," said Naruto with them looking at him with shocked faces. "Why?" they said in unison. "This is a matter of concern. Look there," said Naruto pointing at a piece of cloth on the ground. Looking over to where he was pointing, they found what looked to be a slightly shredded shirt of a member of the White Fang. This was very much a matter of concern. Tying the other end of the rope to a scaffolding, they made their descent down into the abyss before them. As he dropped down, Naruto shook his head, trying to remove the residing memory of the dream he had from his mind. It just so happened that the abyss he fell into looked like this one. Damn it. Finally getting to the bottom, Naruto used his beast sight to scan the area. Spotting Rwby in the one corner, while a whole lot of mechs were being loaded onto train cars, they got ready. Splitting the teams up with Team JNPRK taking the right while the rest took the left, Naruto activated beast sight one more time to see the team in position. But that was when he felt his heartbeat irregularly. Then another, and another. He soon felt sparks of electricity arc off his fingers as he also felt the horns grow out his head. Damn it, he couldn't go beast mode now. Kasumi would see it. She would rather attack him and put her comrades in jeopardy than to stop the members of the White Fang. Weiss put a hand on his shoulder as he gave off a low growl. His power soon began to take over as his eyes shifted to have them as his beast mode eyes. Removing her hand as a bolt of purple lightning shot off, the group looked at him with wide eyes. "What are you doing? Why are you going beast mode?" whispered Yang. "I'm not. It's doing this on its own," said Naruto as he soon had one hand transform into a claw. "Damn it," said Naruto as he struggled to keep it in check. "Naruto. Calm down. You can do this. You are in control of it," said Blake only to have Naruto roar an unholy roar as he transformed fully into his beast mode and shot off from behind cover. As Naruto bolted to the enemy, Kasumi peered from behind the cover she and her team is behind and spotted Naruto in his beast mode. The black embers of the terrible aura she knew all too well burning off his skin as he made haste to the White Fang. Gripping her weapons, she took off as she gave out a cry on wanting to end the monster she sought revenge on, the monster that caused her life to end in one go that fateful day. Her other teammates spotted this and then saw Naruto in his beast mode. Seeing him in such a form truly frightened them, but he did tell them he had great and terrible powers that loomed inside him. Getting up from cover along with Naruto's team, they went to stop Kasumi from doing something she may regret. Naruto charged full force into one of the soldiers and then skidded as he slashed the other in the face. Torchwick backed away as the same person who he saw when he operated the mech slowly approached him with intent and desire to kill burning in his blackened eyes. Slowly backing away as Naruto slowly walked over to him, he watched in the corner of his eye a few members of the White Fang with RPGs on a train car. Smiling as they fired at Naruto, he soon had the smile removed as Naruto roared extremely loud. It caused a small tremor within the cave. Turning to them, Naruto charged up the beam named Beast Strike and fired at them. A massive explosion of purple lightning burst everywhere as Naruto's turned back to Torchwick only to find him gone and the train starting up. He would have gone after the train if he wasn't blocked by Kasumi, who readied her weapons. Time to die. Monster. She growled to Naruto only to have him ready himself to kill her. But he was stopped when everyone including Rwby, who was released in the commotion Naruto made, grab him and hold him in place. No, Naruto. Don't do it, said Pira holding down his right arm. Listen, we're your friends. We're here to stop the White Fang, said John holding down his other arm. Don't do something you'll regret, said Nora holding down his left leg. Slowly the purple lightning stopped, with Naruto turning back to normal. His head tilted back as his features returned to what they originally were. As him being human again. Once he was back in human form, they let go of him as he grabbed his weapon and morphed it back to Osiris. No point in hiding anymore. See that his true identity was revealed. He even unwrapped his right arm, exposing the demonic nature of it. Again, because there was no point in hiding it anymore. The time has come for, look, we don't have time for this. We need to stop that train. If my speculations are correct, then the tunnel this train leads to is right under the heart of Vale, said Naruto, cutting Kasumi from her speech on exacting revenge. Then we need to get there now, said Yang with her, giving Rwby her scythe back. That is correct. Everyone, grab hold of me, said Naruto holding out his left hand. Why should I take hold of the hand that injured my parents so much, snorted Kasumi, crossing her arms. Then I hope you enjoy running, as that train is extremely far by now, said Naruto, with everyone taking hold of each other's hands, with Nora and Weiss taking Naruto's hands. Reluctantly, Kasumi took hold of Yang's hand and soon enough, they were engulfed in black flames and they soon found themselves on the train. Naruto knelt down as he breathed in and out heavily. He could do this no problem, but using reach on himself and others, drew a lot out of his aura. Looking up, they soon found themselves being attacked by members of the White Fang and them setting up a bomb on the train car they were on. Looking over to Naruto, who pulled Osiris off his back, with the blade beginning to glow a violent blue, he looked over to them. Okay. Rwby, myself and Team JNPRK will take on these guys. Blake, Yang and Weiss, stop this train before it leaves the tunnel, said Naruto, with them nodding their heads. Charging full force into the fight, they split up, with Naruto using his beast strength and slamming it onto the train car, causing a massive shockwave that had blue energy blast forth in a wave from Naruto's fist. Members of the White Fang were launched away as more soon began to pour in. Clicking his tongue as they got ready, Pira and Ren sprinted to disable the bomb. Giving them cover, Naruto used Osiris and swung the scythe, creating 3 energy orbs that fired charged plasma energy at enemies. Though very effective, they could only be sustained through Naruto's own aura. With the first bomb deactivated, they carried on, but as they moved forward, they found more and more bombs rigged on the train cars. Deciding to do the logical thing, they began to remove each train car, one at a time. But this only worsened, due to when the train cars exploding, Grim would pour into the holes created from the explosions. Seeing so many of them pour in, the group decided to try and hold off both the Grim and the White Fang. But Naruto had an ace up his sleeve, hunching over as he began to breathe in as much air as possible. He roared out loud, which sounded more like that of a werewolf howl that was mixed with a bit of a demon's howl. That roar you can do when you are a werewolf in Skyrim. This will be the sound of Naruto's Call of the Wild. Instantly, a small group of Grimm, at least 24 of them, turned on their own and began to help slowly down the wave of new enemies. Everyone stood with open jaws. From just one simple cry from Naruto like that, a few Grimm were now attacking their own. Ren looked over to Naruto with eyes that were wide and with the question on everyone's mind. "What the heck was that?" asked Ren. "An ability I gained from my tainted aura. It's called Call of the Wild. It causes a small amount of Grimm to fight for me, for a short amount of time," replied Naruto as he dropped to the ground from fatigueness. "That's very useful," said Pira with Naruto nodding his head. "It is," said Naruto. Guys. We got a problem," said Nora pointing ahead of the train. Looking to where she was pointing, they soon saw that they were about to hit a dead end. This was bad. Looking over to see a member of the White Fang, they gasped in horror as they watched him pull out a detonator and hit the switch. Instantly a bomb went off and they soon found themselves in Vale as people looked at them wondering what the hell just happened. But Naruto was nowhere in sight. Where was he? At that moment, the ground shook with Blake. Weiss and Yank came from the ground while the King Taijutsu came from the ground. With Naruto, who was now in beast mode once again, holding its mouth open as purple lightning arced everywhere. Pushing harder as he broke the jaw of the snake, he gave off a powerful and unholy cry as he sliced the Grimm in half, along with more Grimm bursting out the hole and going after the people. Civilians screamed as they tried to get away from the Grimm that came from the ground and chose to murder everything in sight. End scene. Chapter 12. Trial of the Devil, Part 1. Naruto's mind was a haze of bloodlust as his body steamed and smoked as his aura flared about everywhere. Pira cautiously approached Naruto. Jana, Nora and Ren just stood paralyzed as they looked to Naruto. Sure, they had heard of such a form from him, but they never thought they would see such a monster before them. But then again, it was a matter of time before they would see it. I mean, sooner or later they would come face to face with this form. Kasumi readied her weapons as she watched her friend and comrade walked over to the beast before her, ready to strike should he attack Pira. Naruto looked eyes with Pira, causing her to stand rigid in fear as she gazed into the black abyss pools of his eyes. Hunched over as he breathed out smoke with every breath he breathed. His claws ready to strike at any given moment. The lightning giving off a very ominous feeling as Pira walked over to her crush. Yet Naruto still remained docile the more Pira approached him. His claws just hung by his sides. Naruto for his part was doing everything he could to try and keep himself from not coming across as intimidating and scary. But this was as close as he could get while in beast mode. When Pira was finally an arm's length away from him, he watched as she moved her right arm up to his face. But the clinking of metal echoed into Pira's ears. "Step away from him," growled Kasumi as she raised her weapons to show she was ready to strike. "Rather not," said Blake, getting Kasumi's attention. "Why is that?" scoffed Kasumi. While in this form, Naruto is extremely agitated. "The smallest bit of provocation will make him go on a rampage," said Blake. "All the more reason he should be put down," snarled Kasumi as she watched Pira turn back to Naruto. Raising up a hand slowly to Naruto, she gulped down the fear in her throat. The fear of him killing her in a single strike of his hand that occasionally twitched as it hung by Naruto's side. Placing her hand on his face, Naruto leaned his head into the hand as he released a low growl as he looked into Pira's eyes. Once their eyes made contact, Pira saw that his eyes, even though they were pure black and full of hatred, there was still a sense of feeling. A sense of knowing who they were, even though everything was heightened and will cause him to attack. But their little moment of bonding was cut short as civilians screamed for their lives as Grimm ran through the streets. Naruto turned to the people as they ran away from the Grimm attacking them. Turning back to his teams, he opened his mouth and shocked everyone, including his own sister. "Play. World's greatest battle music ever. We walk amongst titans, ADN compositions. Protect them," he bellowed as he bounded off to attack the Grimm chasing the civilians. Everyone did just that. Well, everyone except Kasumi, as she looked on dumbfounded from seeing the man who had scarred her childhood so much help people. She depicted him as a merciless devil that saw joy and ecstasy in the form of death and destruction. Shaking her head on trying to rid her head of such thoughts, she ran to help her comrades. Blake shot through the crowd of Grimm as Naruto came to a halt and clasped his hands together. Looking over to him, she nodded her head as she sprinted to help her friends. Naruto himself began to spin slowly, but this grew to become a violent torrent of purple lightning. Grimm were thrown into the air as they soon found themselves electrocuted from the sudden experience. Coming to a stop, Naruto looked over to find more of the students from both Beacon and Atlas pouring in as they began to combat the threat. Things were beginning to look up. They would be able to push back the Grimm threat with more hands on deck. Giving a whistle, Naruto caught Weiss' attention. Giving her a motion of him slamming his fist to the ground, she nodded her head and told everyone to get back. Once they had backed away, Naruto sprung high into the air as he charged up his aura into his fist. Once he reached 200 meters into the air, he dropped like a rock, slammed his fist onto the ground. A powerful wave of energy was released as Grimm in a wide area were wiped out instantly. But that was not enough. As the Grimm were beginning to thin out, Naruto spotted a Nevermore flying overhead to a group of civilians who were running to a building. Breaking into a sprint, Naruto found that he will not make it. Coming to a grinding halt, Naruto thought of the only attack he could do. But the civilians will be caught in the crossfire. He'll have to tone it down considerably. Charging up the attack he had in mind, he brought his hands back as purple lightning arced everywhere in the palms of his hands. Only 3 seconds later he was ready. 3 seconds, because the longer he held back the attack, the stronger it got. Thrusting his hands forward, 2 beams of lightning hit the Nevermore from the back. The Grimm howled in pain as the bolts of lightning pierced its body. The beast soon crashed down to the floor as it skidded across the tar grounds. Breathing a sigh of relief while fatigue took over him, Naruto felt a huge weight on his shoulders. He had never felt so drained in his entire life, apart from fighting against so many Grimm one man. But the Nevermore soon crashed into the building, together with it exploding with purple lighting going everywhere as the pained screams echoed through the ears of everyone as the building gave way and fell to the ground. But if that wasn't worse, the sounds of weapons being primed echoed through their ears, and gunships as well as soldiers soon showed up and pointed their guns at Naruto as they surrounded him, with Ironwood making his way to the monster that was Naruto. Breathing heavily as he looked around him, he knew he couldn't get out of this one. His body was just too exhausted. Plus he didn't want to use his powers in an excessive state. End song. Unknown creature. Stand down, said Ironwood as Naruto's team along with Team JNPRK, including Kasumi, as well as Team CVFY, surround Naruto to protect him. You will not take him. He protected us, said Velvet as everyone readied weapons. Returning to his original form, Naruto sighed as he hung his head in defeat. Many of the troops were shocked when Naruto changed back to normal, as they had never seen that before. Even Ironwood was shocked by such a development. It's okay, said Naruto walking past them. I'll turn myself in, said Naruto holding out his hands for them to slam some handcuffs on them. You have the right to remain silent and refuse to answer questions. Anything you say may be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to consult an attorney before speaking to the police and to have an attorney present during questioning now or in the future, said Ironwood as a soldier cuffed Naruto. Naruto, why are you doing this? Asked Pira, not understanding why he was agreeing to be arrested. I indirectly killed those people in that building. That explosion was leftover radiation from the ability called Beast Strike. It happens from time to time. But not all the time, said Naruto, turning to them. What are you going to do? Asked Yang, looking concerned for Naruto. I don't know, was Naruto's only reply, shocking them. For once in Naruto's life, he didn't have a plan at all regarding this. They could trial you and have you executed, said Weiss, knowing how this may play out. Then if they do, I will go down with a smile, said Naruto, standing before Ironwood. We were going, yes? Stated Naruto, looking up to the man. Come along, said Ironwood, walking away. Don't go, said Blake, walking to them only to have Naruto smile to her as he walked away. See you soon, my kitty, said Naruto. Don't go, she cried as she sprinted to him only to have them vanish via teleportation to the ship. Naruto, she cried as she dropped to the floor. In a flash of light, they appeared aboard the ship where Torchwick was as well, who was captured a while ago. Sitting in one of the cells that opened up, Ironwood uncuffed Naruto and stood at the entrance. Dismissing the guards, he donned a face of concern when the guards left. "I'm sorry, Necrosis. I wish there was another way. But the higher-ups ordered this to happen," said Ironwood as Naruto nodded his head. "I understand that, General. I hold no grudge against this," said Naruto sitting back in the cell. "Why didn't you break those cuffs? With that arm of yours you could have done it easily," said Ironwood. "And be named a fugitive? Even though it sounds rather cool, I don't plan on it. I have better things than run from the cops," said Naruto with Ironwood nodding his head in understanding. "Your trial will begin tomorrow at noon," he said as the cell door closed up. Chapter 13. Trial of the Devil. Part 2. Everyone who was involved in the whole incident that happened yesterday were all seen sitting in the dorm of Team RWBNY, which now looked to be more like Team RWBY. Team JNPRK were also in there, while Kasumi had her arms crossed as she had a scold adorning her features. "I can't believe that monster was under my nose this entire time," she said with venom in her words. "You still going on about that?" barked Weiss as she glared at the sister of Naruto. "Of course I am. Do you know how much pain that thing put me through when I was a child?" retorted Kasumi, now matching Weiss' glare. "Do you even know what he went through as a child?" snapped Weiss. "He was a stuck-up prick who was getting in my way," was her only reply. "He has been through hell on earth. You don't even know what he really went through," said Yang, now getting into the fight. "Why should I wonder? He crippled my parents all because he felt like it. He scarred me for life," snarled Kasumi. "Back off. Both of you," said Blake and Pyrrha, feeling the tension between them. "Whatever. Like I care about that monster," she snapped, while Blake told them to shut up as she switched on the holo screen. With Naruto. Due to having his items confiscated, Naruto was not really in a good position. His mind was feeling the pressure due to him not having swallowed down a pill for more than 10 hours. Osiris too was confiscated, and once again, that weapon was extremely hard for the soldiers to cart it away. It felt like 10 tons to them, when it felt like 5 kgs for Naruto. But then again, the weapon accepted Naruto as its new master, not them. Right now, Naruto was huddled in a fetal position as he held his head as he rocked back and forth as bated breathing echoed from his lips. "Damn it. Why did they have to take my pills?" said Naruto as he drilled his nails into his skull, desperate to use the pain as a way to stop the screams and psychotic laughter. The cell soon opened up and Ironwood was seen at the door with 2 soldiers. The soldiers slammed the cuffs on him and escorted him away. Making their way to the conference room of the ship, which had been modified to be like a courthouse, they made their way there. Making it round a corner, Ironwood dismissed the soldiers and escorted Naruto himself. Once he was sure there was no one around, Ironwood opened his jacket and pulled out one of Naruto's pills. Looking over to Ironwood, who held out the pill, Naruto nodded his head and opened his mouth. Swallowing the pill that was dropped into his mouth, Naruto breathed a sigh of relief as the voices stopped and his mind returned to being calm once again. "Thanks, Ironwood," said Naruto as the general nodded his head. "I know about your little condition. I managed to only smuggle that one from that tube you had before they detained it," said Ironwood as Naruto smirked to him. "That can get you demoted, General," said Naruto as Ironwood escorted him once more. "I owe you after all. I'll gladly take that price for helping you," said Ironwood as they continued to move. With the girls and guys in the dorm, all their eyes were glued to the screen as they watched on as Naruto and Ironwood entered the scene. The feed was a full live recording of the events that were going to play out for Naruto's fate. This was proven as the word "live" flashed red in the top right corner of the screen. Sitting down on the chair in the room, the holograms of the judges who will carry out the sentencing of Naruto came online. There were a total of 4 judges who came into the picture. Ironwood was dismissed from the courtroom and he left the room as he finished chaining Naruto to the chair. "I hope he gets out," said Rwby in a concerned tone. "I hope so too, sis," said Yank, looking from Rwby to the screen then back to the screen. "I hope they sentence him to community service," added John, hoping Naruto won't be thrown into prison. "I hope he gets the death penalty," growled Kasumi as she watched on. With Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze aka Naruto Striker. Aka Necrosis. most feared mercenary and grim hunter in existence. You stand before this court, accused of killing 30 innocent civilians in the attack by the Grim carried out yesterday, said one of the judges while 3 of them mumbled to themselves. How do you plead? Asked one of them as the 3 stopped talking with each other. Not guilty, replied Naruto looking up to them. And why is that? Asked the one judge. I had no intention of causing that Nevermore to explode like it did, killing those civilians. My powers on occasion fluctuate like it did yesterday, replied Naruto locking eyes with the judges. Then what do you explain about that monstrous form you took during those events? Asked the one judge as a screen showed up showing a recording of Naruto in his beast mode. That was a form I took on that increases my latent powers by 500%. It is necessary for me to take on that form as my body will not handle such an influx of power without taking on a physical and drastic change, said Naruto. This was not the first time you transformed, was it? Asked a judge. It wasn't the first time, confessed Naruto. According to documents recently uncovered, you were the prime suspect for the critical injuries of the heads of the Uzumaki Namikaze household, Kushina and Minato. What say you regarding that? Asked a judge. That was because they shunned and hated me. Ever since my younger sister was born, she was a prodigy in everything she did. I am what I am because of those events, said Naruto. So you're admitting that you were the cause for their current situation? Asked a judge leaning forward. I confess to that, said Naruto in a neutral tone. And did you take pleasure in it? Asked a judge. What are you going on about? Are you implying I am a sadist? Barked Naruto. Answer the question with a simple yes or no, said a judge getting annoyed with Naruto. I took pleasure in it, so yes, said Naruto making everyone watching gasp in shock. According to the same documents, you hold a small mental condition. How do you plead regarding this? Asked a judge as the rest looked to Naruto. I do hold a slight mental condition, but again, it was because of those idiots I once called my parents, said Naruto. And what is this condition? Asked a judge. To put it simply, I am insane, but it has been kept in check through medical means of a white pill I take every 10 hours, said Naruto. What happened after you crippled your parents? Asked a judge. I went my own way. I chose a path to become a weapon for hire. I became a mercenary. From there, I became a grim hunter as well, was Naruto's only reply. And how did it work out for you? Asked a judge. Look at how it turned out. I have nearly every nation fearing me, yet I protect them. Need I say more? Asked Naruto. And that was how you became Necrosis, the legendary hunter who sold himself to the darkness within him, said a judge. That is actually a rumor placed by people who I've come across, corrected Naruto slamming himself against the chair. Due to the way I fight, they saw me as a devil. Not a demon like all others fall into, a devil to be avoided at all costs. In truth, I sold part of myself to the darkness due to my parents disowning me and throwing me into a dungeon where I would hopefully rot away. And why did they do that? Asked a judge. Please. All noble families do it. They try to have a powerful child to pass down the mantle to. But I was weak due to my blood being tainted. I couldn't even call on my aura at all, said Naruto making one of the judges arch an eyebrow. And how was your blood tainted? Were you experimented on? Asked the judge. Not even close. See, I learned from my grandmother that my mother went into a fight with a Grim and ingested some of the blood that sprayed her face when she killed the thing. It never affected her, but it did with me. I am like this because of those reasons, said Naruto. It is also revealed that you fought alongside the White Fang for a few months, said a judge bringing up some documents on the matter. I did fight alongside them, but left when I had enough, was Naruto's reply. It is also revealed that you also hold various other powers that have never been seen before. What exactly is this power? Asked a judge. As I said, it is my Grim blood. Due to having my blood as part Grim, I can use many powers. Beast mode, the one image you saw of me, was one such power. I can access a few others and even bolster my own strength should I wish to, said Naruto. And that would explain your arm as well, said a judge with Naruto nodding. Yes. When I awoke the power within me, my arm changed to have it like this. It is also quite powerful as I can quadruple my own strength at the cost of my aura, said Naruto. Any other abilities we need to know before we pass judgment? Asked a judge. I have a forbidden ability called Variantal Beast Mode, Devil Trigger, said Naruto. And what does that do? Asked a judge. In that form I am increasingly strong that I can match up against any grim and win without breaking a sweat. Though it is uncontrollable and tires me out fast, said Naruto as the judges spoke among themselves. We will now pass judgment, they said as the holograms flickered out of existence. With the girls. Everyone stood there. Silence filled the room as they watched the screen of Naruto now hanging his head as he waited for his sentencing to seal his fate. Kasumi right now was fuming. To hear her brother say all those things filled her with rage that she wished he would just cease to exist. The rest of them spoke amongst themselves. That bastard. He dares to say that my parents were behind his suffering. That is bullfucking shit, said she spat. There are always two sides of a story. You had the wonderful, roses and flowers side. Naruto had the dark, twisted and hell side. Maybe you should give him a chance, said Blake, making the redhead scoff at the idea. Not a chance in hell. He caused me to lose everything I had. He should be put down like the dog he is, said Kasumi. He never had anything from the start, snapped Weiss. With Naruto. Looking back up after 5 minutes, the judges came back into view as the holograms came online. All of them looked down at Naruto as he looked to them. Of all the help of our country you did for us, we will need your continued support. I voted. Not guilty, said the one judge. For all the deaths of those who were killed in the incident that occurred yesterday, I voted. Guilty, said the next. Of all the protection given to us out the generosity of your heart, I voted. Not guilty, said the next judge. For all the pain and suffering you caused in the lives of others, I voted. Guilty, said the next judge. The final decision is mine. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, aka Naruto Striker, aka Necrosis. I voted you. Trailed the judge as those who were wacking looked on in suspense. 2 votes not guilty versus 2 votes guilty. It was now down to this one singular moment. 1 vote rested between Naruto's freedom, or his life in prison or death, depending on the sentence there. Guilty, replied the judge as every single person who knew Naruto for who he was gasped in shock at the sudden sentence. You will be put to death by lethal injection when the Veil tournament ends, said the judge as the holograms fizzled out of existence. With the girls. Switching off the holoscreen as a deathly silence loomed over them, all people stared at the now empty spot where the screen once stood. Slowly getting up from her spot as she walked to the door, slowly pushing it open as she walked away, Blake soon began to tear up as she walked away from the dorms. The love of her life was going to be executed. But why? Sure, there was the constant looming of his dark past, but he swore to never go back to being like he was. He swore to always keep her and him safe. And now he was going to be put down like an animal. Tears streamed down her face as she experienced the lose of the one she loved, apart from her parents who were still alive. Making it to the fountain, she broke down near it and cried her eyes out. It was official. Blake had broken down completely. Inside the dorm, however, Kasumi was smiling like a Cheshire cat. In her eyes, she was glad that the monster that had been haunting her dreams was gonna be put down, but she was also a bit disappointed as she was the one who wanted to kill him. But at least she'd be able to sleep a little easy now knowing that he would no longer be alive once the tournament was over. Serves him right, she said arrogantly. She soon found herself slammed against the wall by Pyrrha as everyone else glared bloody daggers to her. The tension was so high in the room you could easily cut it with a butter knife. He didn't deserve to be put down. He is a friend. A good friend. Hell, I even like him. Going so far as to love him. Snarled Pyrrha as she glared to her. Same here. Said Yank, Weiss, and funny enough, Rwby, who had begun to also fall for him. He is a monster. Those feelings you had for him weren't real. He's been misleading you this entire time, stated Kasumi as Weiss shook her head. He would never do such a thing. Everything we felt with him, those were real. He protected us. We fought with him. Sure, on some occasions he went into that beast mode of his, but he still kept us safe. Hell, I'd be dead if he didn't protect us, she said. Why can't you just see that he wants to just keep us safe? So what if his aura is corrupted and tainted? So what if he is slowly turning into a grim the more he uses his powers when he's tired? I see him as good man. A man worthy of being my knight in shining armor," said Pyrrha, letting go of Kasumi. "Then you're too far gone to be saved," said Kasumi, walking out the dorm, leaving them to process what happened to their friend. With Cinder standing over the city of Vale on one of the rooftops, a phone in her hands as she closed it and looked to the CCT tower that loomed on the horizon as the sun set it over the city, casting everything in a beautiful amber color. Such a development. The Beast of Beacon has been arrested and awaiting execution. There may be a chance to recruit him, said Cinder. Are you sure we have the loyalty of the White Fang? Asked Cinder as a man with a white mask over his face and a black jacket on with a rose on the one side of it. In his hands, a weapon that looked to be a katana sheathed. They will listen to me, he said as the group got ready to mobilize. End scene. Chapter 14. Game of the Devil. Sitting in his cell as he held his eyes closed while meditating, Naruto soon felt that he was struggling to keep his mind in check. The twitching of his eyebrow was a sure sign of him becoming extremely mad. Grabbing his head as he howled in frustration, Naruto ran his hands through his thick white hair as he got up and banged on the door. "Oi!" he shouted to any guards in the area. "It's been over 15 hours. Can I get at least one fucking pill for my mental problem? Oi, I know you're there." "Oh, shut up. Your items were confiscated. You are not allowed to get your weapons at all," said a guard passing by. "Can I at least have some fresh air? This thing is fucking stuffy," said Naruto. "Not a chance. I don't trust you," said the guard, walking off. Slouching back as a sigh escaped his lips, Naruto looked over his arm as it glowed its usual blue color. The only thing this piece of grim DNA was good for was for him to channel his aura into bolstering his physical abilities and acting like the occasional flashlight. Other than that, it wasn't really good for anything apart from grabbing things like a normal hand. Looking over to the cell door as it opened, a guard was seen standing there with a set of cuffs. "Ah, finally. You have no idea what this means," said Naruto, holding out his hands, already knowing the procedure. "Whatever. You have some visitors," said the guard as he slammed the cuffs on Naruto. "Okay. Cool," said Naruto, getting up and being escorted by the guard to a room where he could meet the people who were visiting him. Finally making it to the room, he was set down in the chair as he was cuffed to the table through a chain connected to the table. Sitting opposite him was his longtime friend, Kirao, and Weiss' older sister, Winter Schnee. Sighing as he looked at his two past comrades, he waited for their statements they had for him. "So necrosis. A little predicament you got yourself into, eh?" spoke Kirao while Naruto shrugged his shoulders, with Kirao holding out a pill he got from Pyrrha, who he bumped into to give to Naruto. Apparently, she went to the doctor, which supplied Naruto with his pills and got a whole tube for him. But to avoid suspicion, she gave Kirao one for the time being. Meh, it was bound to happen. I mean, a lot of countries didn't really like the things I did. But they forget that I did countless missions for them to protect their borders from Grim. Guess some people are just too dense to get the message across," said Naruto as he swallowed the pill and sighed as the effects kicked in as Winter slammed her hands on the table and shooting up from her seat. "I believe you should have gotten off with a minor sentence. You have done so much for the kingdoms of Remnant. You saved countless lives and held up the peace. Sure, the footage of you in that transformation was weird and shocking, and sure, I had never seen such a transformation, but I dismissed it as a power YPU had, as he had told her about your grim blood," she said. "I understand where you were going with this, but as I said, it was their choice," said Naruto, leaning back in the chair. "But still, I can't bear the fact that my lover is going to be put to death," said Winter as she let a lone tear drop from her face. Truth be told, when Naruto left the White Fang, he ventured to the other kingdoms to explore, among other things apart from killing Grim. There he bumped into Winter Schnee. He went on a few missions which she asked for from her superior, Ironwood. He accepted this as he had fought alongside Naruto a few times. It didn't actually take long for the two of them to form a relationship. Winter was extremely flustered every time Naruto would flirt with her, but she would often counter these flusters with her traditional Ice Queen nature. A few months after that, Winter confessed to really love him, to which Naruto accepted and returned such feelings. 4 days after her confession, the two of them gave into each other and spent a full night, 12 hours in total, where they made love with one another. Winter and Naruto had stayed together a couple days after that, but Naruto once again left her, which he explained that he had to continue on his way on eradicating Grimm. She accepted this and told him to not be a stranger the next time he was in the area. She never thought she'd meet her lover in such a manner. "I know. But this is just how this goes. I'm sorry," said Naruto, leaning forward to try and stroke her cheek, but was stopped when the chain became tense. "I promise. I'll do everything in my power to get you out of here," she said, taking a hold of his demonic hand. "I see you're still as headstrong as always, my snow goddess," said Naruto as he smiled to her with her slightly blushing at her nickname. She was also quite surprised that he remembered the nickname after all these years. "Well, it was nice seeing you, Necrosis. I didn't want us to see each other again like this," said Kirao, with Naruto nodding his head. "Same here, Kirao. Same here." "Oh," said Naruto, making Kirao stop in his tracks. "Tell your sister to get that stick out her ass and go see her family," said Naruto, with Kirao chuckling at what he said. "We'll do that when I have the chance," said Kirao as he and Winter walked out the room, with the guard returning to take Naruto back to his cell. Once he was back in his cell, Naruto leaned his head against the walls as a sigh escaped his lips. To be honest, he didn't want to meet Winter like he did. He wanted to return to her where they could finally be together without him running about seeing that his family wanted to kill him and such. He promised her that should he find a nice comfortable place where he knew they could be safe, he'd return to her. Her and Blake. She knew of the fondest girlfriend of Naruto. But with this as him being in prison and on death row. Play fivefold. Won't let go. Looking to the small slit in the one corner, Naruto peered through it and saw it was nearly night. Closing his eyes, he felt that he was going to dread waking up. The voices were definitely going to return. And he knew a pill would most likely not come at all. But he could not really sleep at all. Instead he looked to the roof, imagining he was staring to the starry heavens that he always slept under. At that moment, all the women whom loved Naruto flashed through his mind. The last one showed Blake as she brushed her hair back and gave him a warm smile as she held out her hand for him to take. "I miss you, my loves," he said to himself as he turned to the side. With Blake. Blake herself sat there huddled on her bed. Her friends had not yet returned and she heard that Pyrrha was going through a bit of depression along with Velvet, who had just confessed to love Naruto. Picking up her phone, she cycled through the pictures she took of her and Naruto together. Their moments together were something she would cherish. Moments that she scrolled through and smiled as a slight crooked chuckle escaped her lips. Flipping through each picture, her eyes soon caught an image and she stopped it. It was of her and Naruto on a cruise ship over the water. Naruto held the phone in a selfie style. He held Blake close to him as she had a very noticeable blush on her face as he took the photo. Throwing the phone onto the bed, she hung her head into her knees that were pulled into her chest, the picture still showing on the screen. Looking on at the picture, she soon felt herself ready to break down in tears. This was a very bitter pill to swallow. A very nasty feeling that the man she loved was going to be executed for just living. Sure, he did kill those people, but it was not intentional. It was by pure accident that it happened the way it did. With Weiss. Weiss leaned against the wall where she waited for Naruto to go on the date she had with him. In her hands was a very beautiful necklace that Naruto secretly bought for her and gave to her when they had lunch at the restaurant. The necklace was that of a wonderful elegant chain with a beautiful diamond jeweled snowflake on the chain. Clasping her hands around the necklace, she dropped to her knees as she leaned against the wall and stared to the sky as a lone tear dropped from her eyes. "You're late for our date, idiot," she said as she finally broke down in tears. With Pyrrha. Swinging around her weapon as she struggled hard to get her mind off the topic of what was going to happen to Naruto should the tournament end once and for all. But no matter how hard she tried to get her mind off such a topic, she just couldn't shake such a feeling off her shoulders. Deciding to stop for the night, she made her way to the dorms. But she stopped in her tracks when she walked past the hallway used for their prom. Choosing to take a detour, she made her way up the stairs and stopped at the very same balcony where Naruto came to see her. The memory still vivid in her mind. How his snow-white hair shone in the moonlight, his ice-blue eyes. Oh, how they were so alluring. How he treated her with such gentleness and grace. How he opened her to show him everything she had. How she was shown that not all people see her as an idol to fall, but rather someone to know and understand. Leaning against the balcony, she let a lone tear as she looked to the ship that passed by the CCT tower. She soon felt a tear drop from her eye as she looked down to see a small puddle now forming. You're such a numbskull. You said you'd be here with me forever. You broke that promise. She cried as she watched on as the ship flew by. With Yang. Yang could be found in the club Naruto owned, the loud music pumped powerfully through the speakers as people enjoyed themselves. A look of utter sadness mixed with depression plastered her face as she leaned against the bar table. Clenching her fist, she slammed it on the counter as a hiss escaped her lips. Damn it. You were so strong and powerful ever since you showed us that beast mode of yours. You promised me. You'd do everything you would to ensure you'd be with us. With me. Why did you do this? She snarled as she got up and left the club to go back home. With Velvet. Her and her friends could be seen enjoying themselves as they ate out at a takeout restaurant. They tried to get their minds off of what was happening with Naruto and the whole issue with the execution after the exams. Sure, they were nearly halfway done with the exams. But she wished there was something they could do for Naruto. It just felt that this whole thing was a load of bullshit. And it was bullshit. Looking over to her plate of food, she looked to her friends who were talking to get their minds off. She got up and walked out the takeout joint. The only thing she wanted, the only thing she needed, was Naruto. She had never felt such an attachment to that man like anything else. To her, he was the one for her. She had finally found the man she loved. She could finally say that she found her mate. If you wish to see it in those terms. We never had a chance to go on a date, she said as a tear dropped from her eyes. With Rwby. Sitting on the rooftop as she looked up to the destroyed moon, she sighed as she laid on the ground of the roof. Her mind still spinning after what happened. Yes, her team had progressed to RTHE next stage of the tournament, where Yang had made it to the next stage, which was the final stage of the tournament. She wanted to see Naruto at least before he was executed. She tried to bury the feelings that began to grow for the part Grim. She tried hard to brush them aside. But ever since she truly began to see these feelings for them to not be just a petty girl crush, she decided to pursue these feelings. But she couldn't get to it. She just couldn't bring her mind to tell Naruto that she loved him, more than that of a friend. And with him about to be executed, she may not get the chance to say those words to his face. Thrusting a hand out to the sky, she separated her fingers as much as possible as if she was trying to grab something. I wish I had more time, she said as she made a fist and brought her hand down. With Winter. Winter could honestly never believe what had just occurred. For Naruto to just take this lying down was something she never wanted to see from him. She thought Naruto had gone soft, but she knew that if he was to resist, then he may invite an entire war with every single kingdom that hates his guts. She knew for a fact that her father, Jacques Schnee, hated him to no extent. Reason why that man hated Naruto so much was most likely due to the fact that he was spotted for destroying one of their shipments of dust. Sure, Winter herself hated him for doing that, but she did one thing her father never did. Get to know him. That was when she fell in love with him and let him deflower her. Climbing into her bed, she reached over and felt the spot where Naruto should be. She sure missed sharing a bed with the part Grim. Sure, society would never approve, let alone her father, that one of their best soldiers was sleeping with a monster. But to be truly honest, she liked these type of things. Oh, how the thrill of doing a forbidden love type thing was amazing to her. You belong here with me, she said as she closed her eyes and dreamt he was in bed with her. End song. With Naruto. I'm so sorry for doing this to you all. I really am, said Naruto as he tossed to the other side. But in order for everyone to see me as a person and not a monster, I must do this. With that being said, Naruto closed his eyes and fully went to sleep. With Torchwick. Laying in his own cell, Torchwick looked about as he tried to think on what he'd really do once Veil fell. The White Fang along with the Grim sure as hell were gonna tear this place a new one. But as he thought about such things, his cell opened up to reveal a guard. You have a visitor, said the guard. At this time of night? Said Torchwick, getting up and being escorted to where his visitor was. Sitting down in the chair, he saw his visitor was none other than his boss, Cinderfall, and she had one hell of a smirk on her face. Judging from that smile, you have a very big plan, and it involves something dangerous, said Torchwick. Try someone dangerous. From the live feed of Necrosis being captured for killing civilians, he is here, on this ship, said Cinder. Yeah, he is. So what? He takes no orders from anyone. He's a devil. A monster that can never be chained or broken, said Torchwick, making Cinder chuckle a bit. But that is where you're wrong. He is already broken. Remember, she said with Torchwick realizing what she was getting at. He's psychotic mind, he said with Cinder nodding her head. His mind is broken. And he keeps the voices in his head in check by taking special pills that numb them for 10 hours. Said Cinder holding up the pill Mercury stole. Let me guess, you want me to give this to him? Said Torchwick taking the pill with Cinder nodding her head. Yes. His mind will be very much broken due to a lack of pills to keep his mind in check. Give it to him with the notion of extending a hand of friendship. From there, we will have the most feared man in existence fighting for us, said Cinder. That's if he doesn't double-cross us, said Torchwick. Then you'd better ensure there are enough bodies to give to him to kill, said Cinder getting up. How do you know he won't kill us? Asked Torchwick. Please. Once a person begins to take pleasure in killing others, they're easily an ally when you give them something to kill, said Cinder walking off already seeing it that Naruto is now an ally to her, and seen.